Welcome to the longest term board gaming podcast. This is episode 59, Voidfall. My name is Tyler.
Hello, this is Kevin.
This is Tyson.
In this episode, we're going to talk about the games that we've been playing lately, plus we've got an awesome interview with designer David Turczi, and then we're going to do a feature review of a little game he co-designed with Nigel Buckle, Voidfall.
Tiny. You said little. It's a little game, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what? It takes like just a little
an hour
or four.
Well, an hour to set up.
An hour. Yeah, right. Yeah. It's not a small game by any means.
No, it's easily the most complex game in my collection.
Yeah, by far, I think the most complex in my collection. I think it maybe is like a Vital Lacerda type weight game.
Yeah, and the only Lacerda that I have is on Mars, and I think Voidfall blows it out of the water.
Wait. Our first on,
on
Mars play. How many? That was like a 6-hour play?
Yeah, it was about that. And it was also a very long setup and rules learned for that one. But we probably should have learned the rules ahead of time for that one. We learned from that.
Yeah, but we watched a 30-minute how-to video. Oh, wait a minute. That was one of two. It was like an hour long how-to video, but yeah.
We learned our lesson. So for the Voidfall, we all watched Paul Grogan's video ahead of time.
And still took an hour to figure out how to play the game together.
Yeah, that's true. But if we didn't do that, can you imagine?
Oh, yeah.
Like how long it would have taken if we didn't have the base knowledge going into it, right?
Well,
it would have taken forever.
We took a month or two off before we played it again, and I had to rewatch Paul Grogan's video again, and then it was still another hour of explanation.
We played a 2-player, right?
Yeah.
And it's like you go from the tutorial to the full game, and it's like you're learning another game,
yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
It's absolutely crazy.
But I will say that long games of that nature, like these really big style games, can be very rewarding, and I like diving into a game like that, but I think there's only so many of those that I can keep or get to the table often enough to value, because there's not a lot of room for error, or going from a month or two later, you have to relearn the whole thing.
Yeah, I think I only have one room for a 4-hour game in my collection. This game definitely fills a void in my collection.
I expected that out of Tyler, but wow, well done.
I appreciate it.
You like that one?
Yeah.
I've been thinking about that for a while, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, and it is a fantastic game.
Oh, it is. Yeah,
it's a really fun experience.
We're going to have a lot to say about it.
For sure.
And spoiler alert, a lot of, I think, positive things to say about
Absolutely.
it, for sure.
Yeah. But let's talk about what we have been playing lately outside of Voidfall then.
Yeah, we've been playing some good games. So I'll kick it off. This game isn't quite as heavy as Voidfall. It is called Winter Court. This game wasn't even on my radar. I didn't know it existed, right? We reached out to Rio Grande, and they were nice enough to send them some demo review copies of games, and this was part of it. It's from one of my favorite designers, Tom Lehman. He designed all the games in the Race for the Galaxy series. He also designed one of our collective favorites, Res Arcana. Fantastic game. This is a 2-player game, 2-player only. I'm going to read, it's very light on theme, but I'm going to read a little bit from Board Game Geek about what this game is about. It says, in Winter Court, 2 rival diplomats plot how to advance their agendas during winter when a medieval court is confined by bad weather to a single castle. Should you approach the royals directly, or should you curry favor with other court members first? Their powers could be used in influencing the royals to your case. Sounds pretty exciting, right?
Oh, riveting.
This game has a theme, but it's very light on theme. Really what it is, it's more of a 2-player tug of war to try and influence these court members, right? And try to get them to your side. So the way the game works is you have a number of tiles that are in front of you, and there's pawns on these tiles, and they're either purple or kind of a natural wood color. The whole point of the game is you're trying to pull those pawns to your side of the table. And the way that you do that is you play cards. So there's 6 different suits of cards, and they range in value from 1 to 10. So there's 60 cards in the deck. You get a number of cards. You get 5 if you're the first player, 6 if you're the second player. And then you can play a card to one of these tiles. And when you play the card, you pull that pawn to your side. And then you have a certain amount of points. The purple pawns they're more valuable, and then the ones to the right of that are less valuable, but they give you certain powers. If at any time you pull all of the purple pawns to your side, you immediately win the game. I've played 3 times now. That hasn't happened, but that is a way that you can immediately win. Otherwise, you're waiting till all the cards are played, and then you count the total score of how many pawns you have on your side. And if you have more than your opponent, then you're going to win. So you play a card and you get a pawn. Your opponent, in order to move that pawn back 1 space towards their side, needs to play a card that has a higher value than the card that you played. If it's on my side, and let's say I'm playing Tyler, he plays a value that's higher, it'll move it to the middle, so nobody controls that pawn. And then he can play then a card that's higher than the previous card played, and then it'll move to his side. So it's this constant tug of war with these different pawns to try to get them to your side. If one of the action pawns is on your side, to start your turn, you can move it to the middle to take a special action. And these special actions let you break the rules, like dig through the discard pile to take a card into your hand, or take 2 actions on 1 turn. Or instead of playing a higher value card to gain a pawn towards your side, you play a lower value card. So it's kind of cool things that you can do to break the rules. You play back and forth, playing cards and doing this tug of war until the last card of the draw pile is drawn, and then the game ends immediately. And then whoever has the most pawns on their side, the most value, ends up winning. So I think the game's great. It's definitely, you can tell it's a Tom Lehman design, I think. There's a lot of smart design decisions in it. It's definitely a tug of war. It reminds me of Lost Cities, where you're playing cards to the middle. You're trying to, that game's almost a tug of war. You're kind of trying to outsmart your opponent by, what card do they have? Do they have the 10 that they're going to play right after I play the 9 to move the pawn over? It's got some similarities there. And it's a game that allows you, I think, to make smart decisions, and you feel smart when you pull off something cool. So I think it's fun. What did you think, Tyler?
Yeah, I thought it was great. I liked those decisions, especially when you had the card actions abilities. The decision of, hey, I could use this ability and it'll let me do something cool on my turn, but I'm giving up a point to do so, right. Especially as the game progresses and you're looking at how many points you have and how many points your opponent has and trying to figure out, okay, is this using this action really worth it to me? I was lucky enough to draw a 10 right at the end, and I stole, I think, the 3-point slot that you had since the very beginning of the game.
Right.
And that was pretty much the deciding factor, and it was just a lucky draw because I think you had the 9 there.
Yep. And I'd been sitting on that for a while.
Yeah. And it was kind of, I kind of pulled the rug out from under you, right? That was fun. I like that it creates the possibility for those moments. The theme,
it's very much tacked on.
Yeah,
right. And the medieval theme doesn't really, jazz me up a whole lot, right?
Yeah.
And it's as far as the production goes, it's very much a Rio Grande production. It's not over the top at all. It's pretty basic. I think it's functional and it does its job, but it's not going to blow you away.
Yeah. There was at one point where you were 1 card away from getting the top 4 royal cards.
Yep.
And that would have been the instant win for you.
Yep.
So I was a little worried about that. I happened to draw a card I needed to pull one of them back. I really enjoyed it, and I think it's on online game stores for like $17, $18.
Yeah, it's not.
So I think that's well worth a 2-player experience, the 2-player experience that it gives you.
Yeah. And it plays pretty quick. It's not going to, take a long time. So you could knock out a few games, in an hour.
Yeah.
Right? So,
we talked about it while we played. The mechanics are different, but it feels a little bit like Lost Cities, where you've got this middle row and you're vying back and forth, you're trying to take the cards to your side. Lost Cities is a little different, but the initial setup immediately reminded me of that and gave similar vibes, even though it's a different set of mechanics.
As you were describing it, that was the game that popped into my head was Lost Cities, and it made me wonder, when you're playing this one, do you feel like there is potential for one player to kind of get a lot of win that tug of war early on that it feels like it's hard to get back from? Is that ever a possibility?
Potentially. I mean, you could get kind of hosed with the draws, right? So if you draw all of the 10s, for example, you're going to have an advantage, right? Because you're playing a higher value than your opponent. There is ways to get around that, though, right? Some of the special abilities will allow you to play a different colored card than you normally would be able to. So I don't think you're necessarily automatically going to lose, right? If you get bad draws, but it may be a little bit harder to do.
But then you're also vying for those action spots quite a bit, the ones that are valuable in the moment, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, the very bottom one lets you pull it to your side if you play the lower card.
Yep.
So that can be huge when somebody's got a 10 out.
Yeah, you can play a 1, and I mean, you're not going to hold on to it long with the 1.
No.
But you can pull it back to the middle.
But if you timed it right at the end of the game or combined it with the wizard that lets you do 2 plays, I don't know, you could do some cool things there.
Yeah, and I didn't mention it, but they're the 1 through 3, they have a little asterisk on them. You can combine those cards with other cards to make higher numbers. So it's possible to get higher than a 10, right? And then you discard those cards at the end of the turn that you play. And then I mentioned combining other cards that are different colors, right? You can get up to an 18 on a stack, right? And then you're probably ensuring that you keep that.
Unless somebody plays the one.
A 19 or the one that's lower, right?
Yeah.
Now you're making me think of Monster Crunch a little bit. And so I'm really excited.
Hey, there you go.
I've blotted that out from my mind.
It's kind of a ladder-ish game. Right.
Oh, no, it is. This game's terrible.
Yeah, right.
It's didn't reject.
Yeah. But I think there is, I think the more you play it, the more you'll see the strategies and how to play better. And I'm excited to play it some more.
I am too. And if you focus too much on the lower cards and trying to get those abilities, someone's going to steal the top 4 cards or
the royals, the purple ones, right?
Yeah, the top 4 royals and just get an instant win. So there's a happy balance there for sure.
Yeah, and I played against Matt the second time we played, I think, and he went after the royals early, and I just couldn't recover from that, right? So, that's a strategy. You can go after the royals, but then you're not getting the special abilities.
Full experience either.
Well,
maybe
I don't know.
Sounds thematic
you're not
to me,
getting
though.
the special abilities and stuff, or I don't know.
But it sounds thematic to me. If you go after the royals, then they leave everybody else desperate, and nobody else has any chance. So
there you go. Wow, there is so much theme in this game. It's crazy.
I did like that on a lot of the spots there were 2 different suits that you could play. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, so 2 different colors, and there's certain abilities that allow you to combine those colors, and it's good. And I mean, easily expandable, right? I mean, you could add different tiles and different actions that completely switch the game up. So I don't know if this one's going to be expanded at all, but it could easily be done.
Somebody commented on BGG, love the theme, love the artwork, and love Tom Lehman's designs. I think they're correct on 2 of those things.
Yeah, Tom Lehman, I mean, absolutely. I don't know about the art. Love the artwork?
Oh, maybe one of those things. I don't know.
Somebody said that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. We're not going to call that person out, but
no. Fine. I mean, art is so subjective,
and they enjoyed their experience, and they loved it. We loved it too. So
absolutely. So that is Winter Court, designed by Tom Lehman.
Well, Kevin, you said it is potentially infinitely expandable. The game I want to talk about is a game that is potentially infinitely expandable as well. In fact, I feel like we played all of the expansions of this game in one go around.
Are we still playing that game?
Yeah. Everdell? Remember that one?
Yeah.
In episode 51, we last talked about Everdell at Cabin Con. And when we played that one, we played with, I think it was pretty much every expansion that was out up to that point.
We may have had
maybe one or two that was missing.
But it was a lot. It was most of them.
And I recall that we all kind of felt similarly, that we liked the experience, but putting everything in it was a bit much. And we kind of wanted to experience the game again, but without everything thrown in it.
Like vanilla Everdell, right?
So I almost got there.
Oh, you had an expansion thrown in?
I played Everdell base game with the Spirecrest expansion.
Okay, did we play that one?
We did play Spirecrest expansion. For those who don't know, Everdell is a worker placement tableau builder game. You each get a different animal type of meeple, and you're trying to build this tableau a la kind of 51st State in some ways. You're building up your tableau and trying to get these cards that combo off one another, and there is worker placement where you're sending your workers to gain resources and do different actions on the main board. That's the basic board. Spirecrest, the expansion I played with, also includes a seasonal card that allows you to go through different events that happen every season. They're usually negative things that change the way that you're going to be playing, increase costs of different things, or make certain actions more difficult, etc. But there are 4 seasons in Everdell that you're going to go through, and at the end of that, that's going to be trigger the end of the game, and then you're going to score all of your points. The player with the most point wins. The one thing that I think you'll remember from Spirecrest expansion, Tyler and Kevin, is the mounts, the animal mounts.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Tyler had a moose that allowed him to camp on worker placement spots and then just be able to do a bunch of action, the same action over and over again, preventing anybody else from being able to do that action.
Do you remember your moose?
I do not remember what happened a week ago.
I don't remember the moose either.
Because I got the moose in this one, and I felt
What did I
very
have
happy.
in that game? Do you
I
remember?
don't even care or remember.
The moose was just more memorable.
Yeah,
Okay.
because the rest of our animals weren't as cool. But I love that in it you get to attach your meeples to the animal mounts, and you
that's
get to
cool.
ride them, right?
Yeah, I like that.
So Everdell, it's beautiful. Like, the game is a gorgeous presentation and does really well. I played it 2 players, which I actually really enjoyed it at a 2-player game. I got trounced. I did not do very well, but I enjoyed every moment of it, and I liked playing it at 2 players, and I liked playing it with less stuff involved. It is, especially with fewer expansions involved, it's a very casual game. It's one that I would teach pretty much anybody who was wanting to get into worker placement style games. I think it does
Tableau builders.
and tableau builders,
Yeah.
exactly. Like, it's a good introductory game, and it's casual enough that you're going to enjoy it regardless of what is going on competitively with the points.
Plus, it's got woodland creatures.
Oh,
like
absolutely.
cute little meeples and stuff.
It's gorgeous, and like art done by Andrew Bosley, who
Right.
I think it looks phenomenal. But I do think that one of the things that it does really well that I enjoyed is that the worker placement in Everdell is really neat, because you have potential worker placement spots you can go to, but not all your actions in a round are going to be worker placement actions. You can do stuff from your hand, you can do stuff from the cards that you've played in front of you, so you can extend your turn. And I really like the decision space of, do I need to use one of my workers now to take one of these higher sought after worker placement spots on the board, or can I get by doing some other actions that are going to score me combos and points and things like that faster than my opponents? And I really like the decision space that has in there. So coming back to Everdell after having played pretty much everything in it, I really enjoyed my play of it with a lot less in it. And I think that ideally I would only ever want to play with 1 or 2 expansions. I did wonder if I played just plain, like, vanilla Everdell, if I would have liked it as much. And I think it would have been fun and I would have enjoyed it, but I do like having Spirecrest, at least. I thought that was a really good expansion to add.
Yeah, throwing one thing in there. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned 51st State. That's what I love about 51st State is you throw one little expansion in, right? And then you have a little bit of a different experience or different flavor to the game. And that's generally how I like to, throw in expansions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the one thing I think I probably wouldn't play with again from what we played with was that Monuments expansion that you put the monuments in, and they had like normally the monuments that we played with, the base game one, were like 4 points each. But there was
that's
like
right.
the monuments we played with had like 25 points for one of them, and it
It
seems
was
like
first come, first serve.
Yep.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Which made it seem like if you get the high one,
Seemed a little overpowered, but
you're set up pretty well. Yeah.
yeah, that's off of
And that
one
took up
play.
like 2 tables to play.
Yes, it did.
It was not a small table. And,
No.
I mean, it was amazing that Ben got it all to fit. That was
Yeah.
that was probably a game in and of itself.
Right.
Getting
And the
it
fact
on
that it's a Tableau builder as well, and you're going to be expanding
It's
your
getting
own play
bigger and
space.
bigger.
It's getting
Yeah.
bigger every time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what were we doing?
I don't know. It makes for a good story, though.
So yeah, that was my second play of Everdell.
Awesome. So I'm going to talk about Star Wars Unlimited. This is, of course, the new trading card game from Fantasy Flight Games. Logan and I have been playing this a bunch. We've so far just been playing with the starter sets, which is Luke and Vader. This is my first ever play of a trading card game. I never played Magic growing up. Didn't play Lorcana. Haven't played Pokemon or any of those. Logan's played Pokemon and Magic the Gathering. I really enjoy this game. It's just really fun, and some of the plays are really quick. So basically in this game, you draw 6 cards, and you have a leader, and then you have a home base, and you're trying to do 30 points of damage normally to the other person's base to win. And whoever can do that first wins. I think in this first set, the Spark of Rebellion, there are 18 different leaders that you can play with. And there's I think 12 different home bases. And some of them have fewer hit points or fewer life, but then might have a special ability with them. So I've played as Luke 3 times and I've played as Vader 3 times. Obviously, both sets play very differently, but basically in this game, so you're drawing 6 cards at the start of the game. You select 2 of them to be your starter resources. So you put those face down. You're not going to play those cards. Those are resources that you'll get to use the rest of the game each round. They'll reset. So cards obviously have costs that you need to pay with resources to play them out in front of you. On your turn, you get to do 1 action, and it just goes back and forth between players. The options for your actions are playing a card from your hand, and if you play like an X-Wing, it's going to go on the space side of your player area. If you play a ground unit like C-3PO, it's going to go on the ground unit side. Cards have abilities when you play them, when they're defeated. There's some, there's a sentinel ability or characteristic that's attached to some of the cards where if you're going to attack, you have to attack and eliminate the sentinel first. Yeah, so some cool things like that. And I'm sure very common.
Yeah, bodyguard and Lorcana.
Yeah, so very common things going on with this. So you can play a card from your hand. You can attack with a unit that's already out and played. When you play a card generally from your hand, it starts out exhausted until the next round, unless you have some type of ability that lets you refresh it or
summoning sickness.
That's what I was going to say.
Magic, or the ink has to dry in Lorcana.
So you can use an action ability. You can take the initiative for the next round or just pass. Right. So you use 2 of your resources, put out a card. Vader and Luke both have abilities. Luke lets you add shields to a card that you've played that round, if you have a resource to do that. And then Vader, but he can do 1 damage to a unit and 1 damage to the base. So he's good at eliminating the shields that Luke puts out. At a certain point, you have enough resources that you can put Luke and Vader into play. And they have very powerful, damage and a lot of health. So when you get those out, that's a lot of fun. At the end of each round, you get to draw 2 cards, and then you can choose to lay down a card from your hand as another resource for the next round. And you're refreshing all your cards, all your resources. You can start building up some good momentum with your resources. It gets to the point where you can start playing some really powerful cards like ATs, Vader, the Emperor, just lots of cool stuff. I've had a blast with this. One of the things that was hilarious in the very first game we played, I had C-3PO out, and he was dual wielding lightsabers, which was just awesome. And he was, super powerful, had a ton of health, and he was shielded. He was just incredible, right? And just the idea of like C-3PO dual wielding lightsabers was hilarious.
Dear.
Yeah. So there's upgrade cards like the lightsabers. There's event cards that you can play that do cool things. And then obviously the units. I think Vader's won 4 times. Luke's won twice. We've each won 3 times. It's just a good game. And I'm excited to start building some decks. I finally I had a couple booster boxes. I sorted those. So we're excited to start playing with some of the other leaders and bases.
Is there a leader in each booster that you open, or what are the boosters like?
So I can't remember the number of cards. It's more than Lorcana has, I think. But
hey, but it's not a competition.
It's not a competition. I'm just giving people point of reference if they played Lorcana.
Got it.
So you open up the booster. You got a leader, a base card, X number of commons and rares, and the last card's a foil card. It might be a hyperspace card where it doesn't have the border. The art is expanded to the edges of the card.
You want those. Those are probably
You want those. Yeah. My foils all came kind of arched, bent a little, and I don't know if that was a Colorado atmosphere thing or... so I've currently got a bunch of them under a stack of books with like 20 pounds of weight on top of them to try and flatten them out. Yeah, because
that's too bad.
You could put them in the deck if you add them to the deck, and you can totally fill and see where the foil cards are. So
that's no good.
And maybe
is that a common issue? Like it's not.
It is common with foil cards.
Stuff
for other trading card games as well. So does Lorcana have foils?
No. Yeah, Lorcana has foils. Yeah, every pack booster comes with a foil, and it can be a common, uncommon, rare, super rare, all the way up to enchanted, right? But which is the ones that everybody wants. But I haven't seen any warping issues with cards on the foil ones. Luckily.
I've seen like people say, "Oh, double sleeve them," and it's like I'm not going to double sleeve these. I don't have another. I'm not going to order more sleeves, right? Yeah.
How are the sleeves? You said you got some special sleeves like that.
I haven't actually used them. I was going to use them for when we start building our decks. So right now, all of my cards are in Sleeve Kings, and then I'm going to use.
You sleeved all of them?
I did. Yeah, just to protect them and.
Wow.
I mean,
how many?
It's like 800
Are you planning on sleeving
cards?
Everything? Well, I shouldn't. I've sleeved most of my Lorcana at this point. What I do is when I build a deck, if I'm putting a card in that I haven't sleeved, then I'll sleeve it. So I've sleeved most of them. But that's a lot of sleeving. For sure.
I don't mind it.
Yeah.
I mean, we've documented our
love for sleeves.
Yeah. So when we do start building the starter or our own decks, definitely going to use the custom Vader and Luke sleeves
that'll look awesome
to play with.
Yeah, that'll be cool. Hopefully the quality is there. I think I told you before, the Lorcana sleeves, the official ones are hot garbage. I haven't bought them myself, but I've seen multiple posts where they peel and people are like, "Oh, you got to double sleeve them." I'm like you. It's like, why the heck would I double sleeve? That sounds like Tyson's worst nightmare.
It is my worst nightmare. I've had that nightmare.
But I am excited about this. It is just fun, and playing with different leaders and different bases. It's just going to be infinitely. I don't know. So much to explore there.
So I'm curious. Do you have to have a Rebellion deck versus an Empire deck?
No.
Good card.
Yeah. So for every card that you're going to play, you need to have a matching symbol on either your base or your leader. Otherwise, each symbol that you don't is going to cost 2 extra resources to play.
Oh, okay.
So you can
mix and match.
You can have Chewbacca in a mostly,
Empire
deck, but
Yeah,
when
the
you
most
play them, it's
efficient way
going
to play,
cost extra, right?
Okay.
There's cool combos, cool things going on. Generally, the Vader deck, you are slow to build up at first, and then you start getting really powerful at the end. So I had, the last game we played, Logan was playing as Luke, and he just got guys out early and was picking at me and doing tons of damage, or small amounts of damage, but it just built up, and it was a really quick game. We had another game where he was doing something similar, but I held him off with like 5 hit points left on my base. And then I got tons of cards out, like the ATST. I had Vader in play. I had the Emperor in play. And it was just, I just blew him away in half a round. It was awesome. So,
yeah, I'm excited for you to start building decks, because that's really where these games shine, is when you have a thought in mind, and then maybe a card you want to build around, and then you build around that and get all these synergies. And what I love about these games is sometimes when you're playing, you discover combos that you didn't even realize were there just in the course of the game. And it's like, whoa, that is so cool. And then you get more ideas. You're like, I'm going to add this card and do all this. And it's just really fun.
It's going to be fun to explore. I'm excited. And Logan's been chomping at the bit to build decks too. And I'm like, hey, let's get 3 plays each of both leaders, and then we'll start building decks. And I got them sorted. So, yeah, I'm excited. Cool. The next set comes out in July. I'm going to sell a couple of my legendary cards, hopefully pay for a booster box that way of that next set coming out. So,
mortgage the house again.
Right.
Yeah. These games aren't cheap, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But they're fun.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So that is Star Wars Unlimited, the Spark of Rebellion set.
All right. So I recently got a game played. It's a game we've talked about before, but it is an expansion to that game. It's also a standalone, but you can put it in the original, and that is Number 9 Plus Plus. This is designed by Peter Wickman, art done by Fiore Gumbuka, and it's published by Abacus Spiel. So this is, I think, one of Tyler's favorite games, right?
Oh yeah.
No, I've liked this game for a long time. It's just a super casual, fun game to play. And real quick, the way it plays is you have these kind of Tetris-like pieces in numbers from 0 to 9. And you're trying to stack these pieces on top of each other. And the higher you get these pieces in the stack, the more valuable they're going to be. So the whole goal is to get your number 9 or your 8 as high up in the stack as possible, because it'll be a higher multiplier.
Feels a little like a ladder game.
Maybe in a way, I don't know. Yeah, so if you get your 8 on the first level, it's going to be worth 8 points. If you get it on the second level, you multiply it by, or the third level, you multiply it by 2, 3, 4. He's trying to get as high as possible. The trick is you have to, when you're putting a piece down, it has to cover 2 other pieces, and there can be no empty spaces in between, right? So it's strategic on how you're putting your pieces down, and if you're able to get a good base to start building up. That's basically the gist of the game. Once you've played 2 of each number, then the game is over. There's cards that you flip over that tell you which number to pick. That's the base game.
So what's different about 9 plus plus?
So plus plus adds things that I wish were in the base game. And if I had plus plus, I don't own it myself. Matt owns it. If I had it, I would include them in the base game. So plus plus adds starting tiles. So one kind of criticism of the base game is that everybody's stack could look similar to start, right? These starting tiles are all unique. So everybody gets a unique starting tile. You just put that in front of you, and then you start adding to that tile. So everybody's going to start different, right? Which I think is great. I love that addition. Another addition is you have these little, there's a 1x1 piece, and then there's
like a
a
filler
2x,
space.
yeah, there's filler pieces that you can put in, and you can put these filler pieces in whenever you want during the course of the game. So the worst piece in the game is the 0, because the 0 just has a big hole in the middle of it, and you can't stack anything on top of it. I mean, you can, but it just makes it more difficult. There's this 2x1 piece that you can just plop right in the middle of the 0, and then that makes a nice base to build other pieces. You don't have to put it there. You can put it wherever you want if there's other gaps. But I love that addition. It just adds another layer of strategy. It makes it a little bit easier to build, but it just makes the game, I think, a little bit more fun. I would add that every time I play, along with the starting tiles. There's also these other tiles that you play with. You can add 2 to the game. I think you can add as many as you want, but they allow you to break the rules a little bit. One of them, normally you have to play adjacent to a tile that you've already placed. So if you're placing on the second level, you have to place next to a tile that you've already placed on that second level. One of the tiles will allow you to put a cube on this tile and break that rule. So you can not be adjacent, for example. So it just allows you to play the game in a little bit of a different way. There's a bunch of these tiles that you can add in there, and they just they switch it up a little bit. You can stack a tile on top of another tile without overlapping 2 tiles. That's another one that we played with. Another addition that I think is great that I'd probably throw in there. The game's not complicated as it is, so just throwing in these extra modules I think is a no-brainer. So I like it. I thought it was great. It was a lot of fun.
I love when an expansion does that because it sounds like I've never played, but when a base game is good and then it sounds like maybe there was some feedback about, it would be nice if the starting titles were different or something, right? Like I love when an expansion feels like it addresses some of the wish list of the fans and then gives it to them in a way that enhances that experience altogether. It's not to fix problems necessarily, but it is to to expand upon it and make it better. And that's what this sounds like to me is that it's creating a situation in which a good game was good. Now let's just make it better.
Yeah. And I think it absolutely does that. The only drawback is that I don't think it's really available.
That's what I was going to ask.
In the U.S.,
pretty hard to find.
Yeah, it is. It is pretty hard to find, which I don't know why they wouldn't make it available here. But it's just a little bit harder to find, so you're going to have to track one down. But if you can, I think it's absolutely worth it. If you're a fan of Number 9, it's a no-brainer. Pick it up. But I think it's a great game to check out. So that is Number 9.
Plus.
Plus.
What happened to the first plus?
I don't know. Maybe there's a hidden expansion out there somewhere that has even more good stuff.
It was so good that it needed 2 pluses.
It needed 2 pluses. That's right.
Well, speaking of a game that is so good that it needs more pluses, I'm talking about a game that has so much content for it already. You may think that it doesn't need any additional content. I was under that same impression, but I was proven wrong. Gloomhaven, Buttons and Bugs.
Plus.
No, it's actually probably minus because it's smaller Gloomhaven.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
So it's a lot smaller, but Gloomhaven Buttons and Bugs is Gloomhaven travel size. And by travel size, the box is teeny. It is like as small, like the size of a deck of cards, and then a few dices high. Few dice high.
Wait, I'm having trouble visualizing this. How big is this box?
Lots of dices. All right?
Lots of dices.
Lots of dices.
Got it.
But no, Gloomhaven Buttons and Bugs is just a really compact version of Gloomhaven. It comes with a deck of cards, a few tokens. It comes with some dials, and then it also has some cardboard tracking things in there. It is amazing to me what is included into this little box and that it feels just like Gloomhaven. I've played 6 scenarios of this game so far, and I've won most of those, but it's also it does a really good job. So essentially what it is, if you haven't ever played Gloomhaven is a role-playing style adventure dungeon crawl board game. And so the fact that they've taken this giant universe, which has lots of scenarios, and condensed it into this teeny tiny box is amazing. But Gloomhaven Buttons and Bugs continues in the storyline of where Gloomhaven left off, where you've got some mercenaries, you're trying to become famous and wealthy and etc. And so they're going to Hale, who in the original Gloomhaven is a big part of the storyline, but goes to her, who is she's got magical powers, and basically she curses you and you turn miniature. So this is like Honey, I Shrunk the Mercenaries kind of idea, where everybody goes small, and now you're playing in a very small world with rats and bugs and small different things. Anyway, what I forgot to mention about this game is it's designed by Joe Klipfel and Nikki Valens. And Joe he designed a fan kind of version of Gloomhaven called Gloomholden, which was a game that you played in your hand, Gloomhaven in your hand. And I'd always wanted to play it, but it was just a print and play fan version of it. So when I heard that Buttons and Bugs was coming out, I was like, okay, this is my opportunity to get to play that system. And Nikki Valens, Nikki Valens did a lot of different support to a lot of Fantasy Flight style games. I think they were in charge of Mansions of Madness and a bunch of other games. So really good design pedigree between this team. And there was a lot of interest just at the surface level for me to play it. I've played through the entire campaign of Gloomhaven, and I've never gone back to it because it's so big and enormous, and it's hard to get to the table. There's a lot of moving parts, and it's hard for me to get it to the table. This does exactly what I need it to do to get a Gloomhaven experience. It's a small footprint, and it gives me a lot of opportunity to explore the system. And what I think it does really well that it takes and enhances from Gloomhaven is this card-driven system where you have each round you're choosing 2 cards, and you're going to choose a top action and a bottom action, and each card has a top or a bottom action on it. You're just choosing the combination that you want between your hand of cards. What's unique about Buttons and Bugs is that every time you do that, you flip the cards over to the back sides once you've played them. So there's an A side and a B side. On the B side, you have now a different set of card values and combinations you can do. So it adds this layer of strategy to which card do I want to use now, not only because I want to use what is on the card, but because I want to flip it over to its other side, because there are certain things that can combo off of it. So like in Gloomhaven, and they've got the consumables, so like the elements that you can consume. They don't have in Buttons and Bugs the same like mechanism in that, where they have the table where you slide. I can't remember the term off the top of my head, but they expire over time, the elements. On this, they're on the cards. So if you have a symbol available to consume that element, you need to have a corresponding one that uses it. So you're trying to flip cards over so that you can consume certain elements so that you can do certain more powerful actions. And it makes for another layer of interesting decision that I've really enjoyed.
So how many cards are you choosing from to play?
So you only have, I think, 4 cards in total, like in your hand. Mm-hmm. It might be 6, but I'd have to double check. But you have a limited number of cards in your hands, 4 or 5, 6, and then you have the backsides of them. So you have a finite amount. And with Gloomhaven, you're still doing the lose cards. So like you have cards that you can use for more powerful abilities, but then you lose them for the entire scenario, which makes it so that you have this depreciating hand size that makes it really hard to manage the exhausting, because if you run out of cards to play, you're become done. Exhausted. Yeah. And you're done. You can't continue. So it's this kind of innate clock that you're trying to manage. Can I maximize my actions, and can I get the actions that I want to be able to do the things? It makes this tactical puzzle that I think is really rewarding.
So do you think this is a good jumping off point if you want to get into Gloomhaven, or is it a completely different feel of a game? Or
no, it feels almost identical to Gloomhaven. So like if you have never experienced Gloomhaven and you want to get that feel, but you maybe don't want to have the experience of like the giant box of stuff and setting up all the scenarios, which is, for me, one of the bigger issues. We talked earlier about Voidfall and the setup in Voidfall, right? Similarly, Gloomhaven, getting that box out and setting up each scenario takes a fair amount of time to set that up. All the components for setup are on the back of a card. They're pre-printed. So nice. You're just setting up where do the cubes go for representing enemies, where does my miniature go, and then set up the scenario-specific villains that you're fighting. So it is a good jumping off point. I will say it's $15, or at least that's what I paid on the crowdfunding campaign. And the components can kind of match that. So if you want high quality components, this may not be the best version for that. The cards, you talked about sleeving earlier. I would almost say you have to sleeve this one.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
I
Nice.
haven't sleeved it, but you get some card
'Cause you don't own
warpage. Because I don't own sleeves, exactly. But there is some card warpage on this. It's really thin card stock. And for some people, I've even read and heard they're having trouble keeping some of the pieces on the card because it's so much warpage that it can slide around. I haven't had that problem personally, but there's that. And then the other complaint from a component standpoint that I've heard a lot about is there is no actual rule book in the box. It comes with a how to play, like a very condensed one. So there's no printed one. You have to have, if you've never played it, you have to go online and use their online rule book, which some people get really frustrated about.
That's how they could keep the box so small.
But that's exactly, like for me, that's like, I don't see that as a problem because it gave me an opportunity to play this really compact version of the game.
And just have the rules up on an iPad or a tablet, whatever you want. Yeah.
Or print them off.
print them off,
Go to the website, print them off, and if that's what you need, that's fine. That's not a problem for me, but I know that's a huge problem for other people, and I just don't see it personally because for $15,
Right?
like it's a no-brainer. This is Gloomhaven at $15 entry point. That's
Well, and for me, like I haven't played Gloomhaven, and if this is very interesting to me because, and I think a lot of people play Gloomhaven solo.
Yes.
Right? Like I think you played it solo.
I've played it solo a number of times. Yeah.
Yeah. So having a solo experience for $15 just to get a feel for it, could be great. And then if you love it, then you have all kinds of other content that you can explore, right?
It's a great kickoff point. Like obviously I think Jaws of the Line, which Tyler you've played, is a great kickoff point in terms of if I want to play with other players, and it's a good like introductory.
Teaching the rules slowly over the first 5 scenarios and stuff. Yeah. I agree. I think that's great if you've got multiple people playing, but for solo, this sounds awesome.
Like this hit, I've mentioned it before. So my favorite thing about solo games is the depth of gameplay or like a narrative experience and short setup but engaging mechanisms, right? Like those are the two things I look for, and it's rare to see the overlap between those because usually to get a lot of good narrative or good like story-driven campaign style game, you need a bigger box experience, and then you lose that quick setup and that smaller footprint experience. This does that. So like for me, this is the ideal way for me to play Gloomhaven. I would love to play Frosthaven. I would love to play through Gloomhaven again, but I don't think that's ever probably going to happen. Maybe when my kids get old enough, I'll play Gloomhaven with them.
Maybe in retirement.
Yeah, exactly. So this is the perfect entry
How
point
many
for me.
scenarios is it?
It has 20 scenarios in it.
And then each one's like 15, 20 minutes or?
Yeah, no, that's probably a fair amount of time, 15, 20 minutes. And it's 20 scenarios. It is a linear kind of...
okay, so no branching.
Yeah, the narrative doesn't really
storyline.
branch as well. And it is... that is something you lose. Like, there is progression in the character development and things like that, and you still can replace cards and upgrade cards and do stuff like that, but you don't get any of the like stickering, and you don't get any of the legacy elements that you get in Gloomhaven, and you don't explore a map and go to different like choices. So if you were looking for that, you're probably not going to get that from this experience. But it, like Kevin said, this is a good way to kind of get exposed to, would I be interested in a bigger version of this?
Well, it's awesome too because, I mean, this did over 5 million on backer kit.
Yeah.
And that's not counting what people added when they went into their pledge manager.
This did 5 million?
Yes.
Well, that's
For a $15
It had
game?
it had the RPG in that backer kit.
That's
it
true.
had Frosthaven.
say, how many people backed
and
this
it
thing?
had Gloomhaven, like the
So
2.0 or whatever.
Okay,
Okay,
you're
so-
right. You're right. I forgot about that. But it does have over 34,000 backers.
Okay, that's a ton of
The,
backers.
the thing that excites me about this is there can be multiple Gloomhaven campaigns written for this. There could be, it's easily
Absolutely.
expandable, new campaign, change it up a little bit. I also think there's a lot of potential here to stick a different IP on it
Oh, easy,
and use
yeah.
the game system for some really cool experiences.
Well,
In addition to what it's giving you as far as a Gloomhaven experience.
and even in the Gloomhaven experience, there are 6 different characters in this box. Unlike Gloomhaven, you can't choose multiple characters to play at the same time. So you're choosing one class type and going through the scenario with that. Meaning that at the very least, you have 6 playthroughs before you've seen everything in this box. And there are a couple of other class specific scenarios, so you don't necessarily go straight into a scenario, and it gives you an option that, hey, if you're playing the Bruiser, then you're going to, if you beat this scenario, you can go to a different scenario than anybody else gets. It gets class specific scenarios that showcase their abilities and how to play with that character, which is really cool.
Send this to Reiner Knizia. Let's do Cats in Space. You got the engineer, the pilot, the captain. I mean,
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, new theme. Boom.
Yeah. I will.
Senator Reiner, his games are dripping with theme. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
That's a
That's
clear
exactly
choice.
what we need.
Yeah.
As a follow-up to Mlem.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it sounds awesome. I'm excited to maybe borrow your copy.
I'm
or play it or buy it myself. I
For
backed it-
$15, yeah.
I backed it for $1, and then I never actually filled out my pledge, so I'm disappointed that I didn't.
Yeah,
But
I think for me, it's well worth it. Now, if you don't like Gloomhaven, you're not going to like Gloomhaven buttons and bugs.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to change anything. For me, one of the biggest issues with Gloomhaven is that it is a binary progression system in that if you lose, you have to go play that scenario again. There is no branch. There is no ability to lose it forward, right? There's no failing forward. It's just you lose until you can get that again. And that's not my favorite. I like losing and then having consequences as a result of that. And so this doesn't fix that. If you can't figure out how to play the character well, you're going to be playing that over and over and over again, which for me, because I don't enjoy that, I tend to fudge stuff a little bit.
Hey, look, I won.
I try not to outright just be like, I lost.
instead of 2.
But,
which
like,
was just enough.
It's more the modifier deck type of stuff, right? Like in Gloomhaven, you have the modifier. If I got the curse one, which negates all my damage, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna re-roll this, or I'm gonna retry that, and so this doesn't fix that. So again, I love this. I think it's really good. I'm excited to go through it with multiple characters. I'll be playing it for a long time, and I think that if you like anything you hear here, or if you like Gloomhaven, it's worth checking out.
Nice.
All right, so I'm going to talk about another Mindclash game, and this thing is kind of a beast. It's Septima. Okay, we were originally going to do the feature review of this. We decided to switch gears and go towards Voidfall since we had the David Turczi interview. Septima is designed by Robin Hegedus, and the artists are Vilo Farkas and Barbara Bernat. This was supposed to be a lighter weight Mindclash game, but it didn't end up being that way.
No, not at all.
So basically, the theme is the Septima, or the leader of the coven, is aged and she's moving on soon. And so you and the other players are vying to be the best coven so that you can become the next Septima. This game is difficult to learn, but I feel very rewarding. It's beautiful. The production, top quality, just like Mindclash, all their other games, just every step of the way is planned out.
I love
well.
the art. I mean, the look of it
art is amazing.
It's fantastic. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love it.
So basically, in this game, you're playing through 4 seasons, and each season you have a preparation phase. You skip that in the first season, and then you have 5 moon phases. And during the moon phases, each moon phase, you and the other players select a card that you're going to play from your hand. You have all the same cards. They do different things, like there's a move card, there's a gather resources, a heal card, a brew, a chant, a ritual, a remember, a plead, all these different cards. I think there's 8 or 9 total, and you choose one from your hand to play simultaneously, and you put it face down, and you can negotiate and talk about, hey, I want you to play this, or don't play this, or you can throw misdirection out there, right? So what happens is, all at the same time you flip over your cards, if you match the same card with any other player, you get a bonus action that you get to do with, or a bonus reward with that card. But you're drawing attention to yourself because you're gathering as witches and doing the same thing, right? Because there are hunters that are hunting witches in this town. And or if you match with the Septima, there's a couple of Septima actions in the 2-player game, and in more than 2 players, there's one that's always active, and then you can see what the next action is going to be. So if you match with the Septima, you'll get the bonus, but you'll draw even more attention to yourself. So you then carry out the actions in turn order. Then the hunters will move if there's one in your zone, and the board is divided up into 6 regions. And in the center of the board, you've got the town where the sick patients are. You're trying to gather resources, brew potions, and heal the patients. You're also trying to go up on this ritual track. And you're also, at the end of the 5 moon phases, there's going to be a trial. There's a witch on trial. And if any of the witches got caught by the hunter during that round, a second witch will be on trial. And then you're trying to, so during the course of the round, you're also trying to potentially seed the jury, which is going to be drawn randomly from a bag eventually. And it might have angry citizens. It might have a bunch of Tysons or Kevins or my meeples in it, depending on how many I've contributed to the waiting area before the trial happens. So then the trials happen. If the witch is acquitted, whoever contributed the most to that acquittal gets the witch to add to their coven, and you have 4 spots. You start out with 2 witches, so you can have up to 4. You can go down to 1 witch potentially. But then, so you get that reward. Each witch has a special ability that is triggered usually by a specific action that you do. So there's a lot going on here. You play, so you have 5 actions each round or each season. There's 4 seasons. At the end of that, whoever has the most points wins. I really enjoy this game. Tyson, unfortunately, we could never get this to the table with you. Kevin, you've played it a bunch.
I've played it twice.
Oh, okay.
So I wouldn't say a bunch, but I've got a few plays in.
Okay.
I like it, but it felt kind of flat for me. It's not a game that I'm interested in going back to. It just didn't stand out. Mm-hmm. But I had fun playing, and I love the theme. Like I said, I love the art. I love the look of it. But there was nothing really jumping out to me on it. And there's one thing that really kind of bugged me about it was the whole, you mentioned the trial, and that is a little bit random. You can, like you said, seed the bag a little bit, get more of your people in there to the trial area. I forget what it's called. You can
Trial chamber.
You can do that. That doesn't mean you're going to pull your pieces out. Like I sent so many people and had so many people in that bag, and both games I played, they just didn't come out. So
there's some bad luck.
There's some luck of the draw
from bad.
There is. So I had similar experiences. I've played this 6 times. I played it with Ben and Greg. I played it with Logan a few times, and I played it with you a couple times. I kind of gave up on going after the trial in some of my later games, and those were some of my more memorable or more more enjoyable experiences with the game.
Did you? How many witches did you get in those games? You didn't.
So I got up to 3 in one of them, because if you go up on there's healing tracks. Each time you heal a specific remedy,
right.
you go up on that track and you get a reward. At the top of at least one of those, it gives you a witch. Which I have won the game where I was just focused on healing and going up on the ritual track and didn't worry about the trial at all. And I felt like that was more fun for me, because I did have similar experiences where I had a ton of guys in the trial chamber, but so did Logan, and he ended up winning the witches, right?
And Logan seems to go after the
he
trial
goes after
every
it.
time. Right?
Yes, he does.
Yeah.
The ritual track is really cool. That adds a different dynamic. It's a complex game. I can understand it. The sentiment of it fell a little flat. It's not my favorite Mindclash game for sure, but I still enjoy playing it, and I would definitely play it again. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And the components are amazing. My one criticism of it is the hunters never, if you've played it a couple times, you can make it so the hunters never really have a chance to catch you.
There's not a factor.
And so one of the things that we did play with a house rule a couple times is we always had 2 witches on trial, regardless of whether a witch got caught by someone. Because I played this 6 times, and I think I saw 1 witch get caught.
You're really
once.
selling Kevin on coming back to this game now.
No, I know the house rule.
Let's fix this game
But
with the house rule.
We played it one time with you that way, I think.
We did. So the first
And
time
it was better.
I think it's
we did play a 4-player with Ben and Greg.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's probably a better change, but the fact that that's not in the original rules it just grates at me. If it's a better game that way,
You're twitching there.
Yeah, I'm over here twitching.
It's like my disdain for terrible films.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Yeah.
I really enjoy it. Like I said, it's not my favorite Mindclash game. I'm going to keep it in my collection. I would play it from time to time.
I still want to play it because I own a copy in Shrink, and as this discussion goes, I chose not to back Voidfall because you both had backed Voidfall.
You made the wrong choice.
And I chose to back Septima, and you both backed Septima. I think of the 2, I probably should have backed Voidfall for a game that all 3 of us would have instead of over Septima.
Yeah, I mean, you just don't know going into that, right? But
yeah,
I think Voidfall's clearly the better game. But
I erred on the side that I figured we would get Septima played easier because of the length of time and the depth of play.
Yeah. And I think Septima is much easier to pick up. Like if you took a long break, it would be easier to pick back up. It's really not too complicated once you've played once or twice.
And it plays so much quicker than.
Well, the way you describe the theme, that is Tricarion.
Oh, is it?
Tricarion's the same idea of there is the magician who has disappeared and gone away, and you're trying to replace him as the magician, other illusionists to become.
Yeah, you're the next Christian Bale or Edward
exactly.
Norton. Yeah.
Or Job.
This is the magic trick, huh?
Illusion, Michael.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the unique things that it does, and I'm completely drawing a blank. That's kind of how forgettable this game was for me. Yeah,
I think the trial's unique. The ritual tracks are unique. The simultaneous action selection, and then the double-edged, you get a bonus from doing that, but then you also take on more threat or whatever, or you draw more attention to your witches, right?
Yeah. Did you find you were like talking to people about what they were going to choose and like trying to deceive them or saying, hey, choose this because we want to get the bonus? Or was that a part of the game?
Not
Any of your
really.
games at all?
Well, so in my 2-player games with Logan, no, we were just doing our own thing.
Right.
I think it would shine a little bit more if it had some more of that going on in our plays. The first play that I had, Ben and Greg were who I was playing with, and they were essentially agreeing to play the same thing
every time,
every turn, almost.
There's no deception there at all. It was just like, hey, let's play this.
Yeah, and and I was like, this isn't a fully
Is that the spirit of the game?
Yeah, it's not a team game. Like, that was the only game where every time a card was being played, there was discussion happening.
Because I generally like those types of games where you're trying to get in players' heads, am I telling the truth? Am I not telling the truth? That type of thing. But I didn't get, in my plays, I didn't get the feel of that in this game, right?
When you described it, Tyler, that was the thing that stood out to me. And I was like, okay, that sounds
right.
Really
That's right up your alley, right?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, so if the group was keen on that and doing that, I think it would make it a more enjoyable play. I
could see that. Yeah.
I still really liked all of my plays. I think it's a fun game. It's beautiful. It doesn't have that stand up. It doesn't have that double snap moment necessarily.
Yeah.
But there is a lot going on, and it is a fun game. So that is Septima from Mindclash Games.
All right, so I'm going to go from a complicated game to maybe one of the least complicated games I have ever played. Right.
Yeah.
This is called Autumn. So Devere was nice enough to send us a copy of this one. It is an 18 card game. It's designed by Maria Blasco Arnadas and Enrique Blasco. And then the art is done by Maria Biasco Arnadas and Carlos Ureta. And like I mentioned, it's published by Devere. So the way this game works is you have a deck of 18 cards. And on these cards, there are 4 spots that have one of 2 colors of leaves. Either there's yellow leaves or orange leaves. Okay. The first player will flip over a card and it will have a number of these leaves on them, right? 4 of one of those 2 colors. The second player will then say a color that they want to choose before they reveal the second card. So either orange or yellow. Then they will reveal the card and play that card on top of the card that was already played. The rule is you have to cover at least 1 leaf or 2 leaves. Okay. And then it goes to the next player's turn. They have the same choice. They take a card and then they can cover either 1 leaf or 2 leaves. And they have to keep the orientation of the card the same. They can flip it 180 degrees, but you can't turn it 90 degrees sideways. All right. The whole goal of the game, what you're trying to do is you're trying to get a continuous group of your color of leaves. So it has to be orthogonally adjacent, not diagonal. And the person that gets the biggest group of leaves together will win that round. You add up the points for first and second place, and you play over 3 rounds. And whoever has the most points at the end of 3 rounds wins. That's the whole game. Super simple. Tyler and I got a play of this about an hour ago.
It was awesome.
And it was really fun.
It's a fun little palate cleanser.
Yeah, and that's exactly how you should I would describe this game. It's a palate cleanser. It's not something you're going to think really hard about. It's not a lot of strategic decisions. You're just trying to get the biggest group of flowers that you can. There are decisions to be made. Do you block off the other player, or do you work on building your own group? Where you place the cards, there is definite decisions and hard decisions to make. But they're fun. They're fun decisions.
Well, and it's fun because, you might be going for yellow, and then you draw the 4 orange card. And it's like, where am I going to play this to not help out my opponent?
Yeah. And there are better places to place it than others, right?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of fun decisions.
And I would say our one play, the game came down to the 3rd round, the last card that was drawn. It just happened to be one that helped me get enough points to beat Kevin. We were tied going into the last round.
Yep.
And
I was winning up to that last card.
Yeah.
And you were able to connect 2 separate areas. Yeah.
So it's kind of like a tug of war, like you're covering up the other color and then they cover up yours, and it just kind of going back and forth. You're building it out from the center, right? And because you can only cover up 1 or 2 leaves for each card, as it builds out, the cards in the center are protected and they're fixed, right? So lots of cool little decisions going on. Really quick game, but a lot of fun. $10.
Yeah, it's kind of a no-brainer. If you need to get to a shipping threshold, then throw this in the
especially if you're looking
cart, right?
A 2-player game, right?
Yep.
I gotta watch you guys play. about a round and a half of this.
And you picked up the rules in about 35 seconds.
Yeah.
In 2 turns. I watched you take 2 turns. I was like, okay, I think I know what this game is, and I've got it. In fact, at the end of it, I think I figured out of that round. I figured out you guys weren't scoring correctly without.
I have
knowing
5
the rules.
points. No, you don't. You have 8. Oh, right.
Yeah. I don't know how I was like totally missing one, but it was adjacent to mine, and we missed
And I did
one.
the same thing.
Yeah.
But I've played a lot of 18 card games. I love that design space. I think there's a lot of really clever things doing it. I've seen games that take this basic core mechanism before and do similar things of tile laying, kind of overlapping things, head-to-head combat stuff. But what I really liked about what I saw in this was that it is a communal draw pile, and you could get, like you said, Tyler, you could get the card that has the 4 of your opponent's color, and you have to make that decision of what you do. Or you could get ones that are more beneficial to them. And sometimes playing it, as I was watching, you want to be in control of their card, or you want to be in control of your card for different reasons. And it was interesting to watch that decision space.
Yeah.
You definitely have a benefit if you're the last player to play a card.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Clearly, because that last card you played was very beneficial.
I was counting cards, and I knew it was.
Oh, yeah,
it was coming up.
I'm sure you were.
I'd memorized all 18.
Yeah, clearly. So great little game, Autumn from Devere. If it sounds interesting, definitely pick it up.
Nice. So I think that wraps up the games that we've been playing lately that we're going to discuss. We're going to jump into our interview with David Turczi, who is an amazing designer. I mean, Anachrony.
Right.
Both of your favorite games, at least, your top game, at least at one point.
Yeah. Last time we did our rankings, it was it topped the list for me.
Yep,
right.
and me.
And he's done a ton of solo designs. He's done a lot of co-designs of really a number of games that are at the top of our lists. But he's also the solo guy.
Yeah.
Oh, he does a lot of solo designs.
Yeah. And you'll hear a little bit about that. So let's jump into the David Turczi interview. All right. Well, we're so excited to have our next guest on the show. We are joined by David Turczi. Welcome, David.
Hi. Thank you for inviting me. And you got my name surprisingly right for English native speakers.
Oh, well, that's good to hear.
We've been saying it a lot over the last several years. So
yeah, we have. So David, he's designed many amazing games. He happens to be the designer of my number one game of all time, Anachrony. Absolutely love that game. All other games that we've played, Voidfall, Tekenu. It seems like countless other games that you've been involved with, David, that we just absolutely love at the longest turn. So thanks for some amazing designs.
It's not by choice. It's if I try not to design them, then I go crazy, and my brain just sidetracks me, and I have to sit down and design again. So it's an obsession. It's a madness.
Oh, I love it. That is awesome. We can tell that you're passionate about your designs, which is awesome. So when did you get into board gaming, and what led you to start designing games?
During university, I was never the party hard kind of person. So when all right, let's go have some social fun, I guess. Then that quickly devolved into an evening of Munchkin. And then, so you like playing those kind of games, and you're a big Battlestar Galactica fan. Here's Christmas present, Battlestar Galactica, the board game. For the next two and a half years, our friends group played it on average 3-4 times a month. So
wow.
Also, we didn't really know that there were any other games, but we didn't need it because we liked it. And, the power of youth, you have all the time in the world, 3-4 hour game, who cares? Twice a week, it fits easily. And how I got into game design is that one of the guys on our gaming group, Mihai Vince, Michu, he came back from a family holiday in 2009, I want to say, maybe 2010, August, and he said, well, I didn't even try to teach my family Battlestar Galactica because it's too complicated for them. So, but 2 weeks is a very long time, so I was bored and I designed a simpler game for them to play. I was like, all right, let's show it, and it all went downhill from there, and that's that the. I asked if I could help, and then I had a lot of ideas, and then that game got published in 2013 under 3 of our names. And after that, on the next designers meetup in Hungary in 2014 or something, we were suddenly the guest stars because we were the only internationally published Hungarian designers, whereas it was a tiny 1.5-person company that picked up our games, and like we weren't famous or successful or anything. But that was half a year before Mindclash launched, and the guys, Victor and Richard and Ville, the creators of Tricarion, came to us and was like, "Hey, Mr. Pros, how can we make this game better?" And I played Tricarion and was like, "I'm sorry, this is so much better than everything else I've ever played. Can I work for you instead?" And and half a year later, we signed an acronym. So, which was my technically first Euro design ever. So I learned it on the job.
Oh, wow. So what was that first design that you got published in? What was that game?
Redacted.
Redacted. Awesome. Cool.
It's a hidden team tactical movement game. It had where you like 2 versus 2 teams, but you don't even know who your teammate is, and then when you meet, you exchange cards to fight and punch each other, but maybe you don't want to punch each other. And it had a lot of very fun ideas. And once you know everything, and we had a group meta and everything, we had a lot of fun with it. But it had a million thematic rules, and both the length and the interestingness of the game depended very much on the players going along with it. So I've heard a lot of people really hating it, and I've heard a few people clicking it and saying how much fun they had with it. So that stuff never took off, but it got me through just enough doors to find another quest of doors afterwards.
To get to Anachrony and to really get started. That's cool. So you mentioned Battlestar Galactica. I love Battlestar Galactica. That game's fantastic. Unfathomable is kind of a reskin of that we really enjoy at the longest turn. Is there any other games or designs or designers that have influenced you in your board game design?
These days, I definitely watch my peers, both to learn their good stuff and to spot what they haven't yet done, to try and design for the gaps. But it's more like I know what bits of the Italians I like, and then you can look at Tawantinsiu, which is like me showing how I would do an Italian game if I was using the Italians' tools. Then obviously there's a lot of tricks of Vidal Lacerda that I love, and you can see signs of it on some of the Mindclash designs. Who else? Yeah, I'm just looking at my peers, and I'm in that very lucky situation that I can talk to the people, not just to their games. So it's not really other designers influencing me. It's more like literally me learning from them, because I went from amateur to a published designer with a name so quickly that I had the opportunity to learn it while being a professional, instead of coming in as an amateur and doing I was given the chance to do things badly first and yet keep going. And that was just being at the right place at the right time, and a lot of luck. And it's like, I look at how I designed games 5 and 6 years ago, and it's like, they're nice try. And yet those are all published games that turned out right. So, luck.
I mean, Anachrony was 2017.
Yeah, I designed it in 14. Yeah.
That thing's a masterpiece.
I mean, I don't want to take all credit for it, because the thing that makes you feel it a masterpiece, that is definitely Victor and Richard's touch. That's the Mindclash vision. The smartness of it that makes you think while you're playing, that's me. That's what I designed. The wanting all the workers, but also having to manage them, but the water, but the not wanting to spare the action to wake them up, the engine building with the building types, the built-in semi-push your luck with the breakthroughs, the sometimes defaulting on your loans is a better move than paying them back, but sometimes taking a just in case time travel is a better move than not taking one. So those things, the tough choices, that's me. Those are the things I always liked and know how to design. But Victor and Richard and Ville knew from day one how to make something look wanted. And sure, 10 years later, I hope I've learned some of that too. And today, when I design something, I design with that eye. But Anachrony was given this much chance and this much engagement by so many people because the Mindclash touch made it look wow.
Yeah, I mean, the table presence on that game is off the charts
I'm
with
not
the
just talking about prettiness, but also the best example is the exosuit. The mechanism, the way it worked for me is that you had 3 action tokens, or I don't remember the exact numbers, and your workers. And if you wanted to go to the main board, you put an action token that was a player colored with a worker out to the main board. If you wanted to go to your own buildings, then you put there, but you gained a new action token, and you had a hard limit of 6 or 7 action tokens. And if you ran out of money or water or whatever was the currency at the time, then you discarded 1 action token and got the money. And their action tokens were tiny little meeples, and the workers were like tiny little cards. And I think it was maybe Richard who glued a crocodile, I don't know what's the English name for it, the thing you can put on the name tags to keep to stay on your clothes. On the back, he glued it on the back of the meeple and then clamped the worker on it. And
that's awesome.
That visual, and then the gameplay, and that inspired gameplay improvements. We got rid of the toss an action token to get money and introduced the decision of how many action tokens do you want to buy at the beginning of the game, and then got a thematic integration to it that these are not action tokens that you buy, but these are exosuits that you're literally going out it, and that visual of the worker being on the worker-shaped token inspired this whole thing. So this is not theme or mechanism, this is everything together, and product design, which makes the miniatures reasonable. So it's like all of this together elevates it. So way beyond just looking pretty.
Yeah. I think that in any worker placement game, that slotting of the worker into the exosuit is probably my favorite thing in any worker placement game. It's just so satisfying to do that and then to put the worker out. And then the fact that the workers specialize in different things, it just makes you think about what you're doing in a different way, which is really interesting.
Well, the specialization was part of my first prototype, so that I'll happily take credit for.
Nice job on that.
I don't mind defaulting on my loans every once in a while because there are some better things out there to do. And Mindclash's production is off the charts. We're big fans of their games. I've volunteered for them a couple times at Origins and Gen Con the last couple of years. I got to meet you last year. That was really cool.
Yes, that's the same Michu that got me into game design 15 years ago is now working for Mindclash as the lead developer, one of the lead developers, and he was the one who made sure that Voidfall is as good as it came to be. So yes, the circle closed.
It just seems like a really awesome company to work for. When you're designing games or when you try out a new design idea, do you have a theme in mind, or do you just come up with the really complex mechanics and then interweave them and then figure out the theme?
It entirely depends on the game.
Okay.
If I am designing a T game for board and dice, then I will start from at most half a sentence of theme, but probably start from a sentence of mechanism. Nucleum started with, I want to, well, initially it was deck building, but then it quickly turned into tile rondeling, so like Concordia on tiles with dominoes that you can trash out to build your network. Because that visual, that this is my card to play an action, but I put that card on the map to create a rail, that's just natural. That's the difference between doing something smart and doing something natural that is smart. That the latter one, you feel that this is the right way to go. So Nucleum started from that. And okay, what do we do with Rails? We power some infrastructure. Okay, power. What do we want to power? Well, so there is Barrage. So we don't want to do the exact same thing. I don't know. Let's do something else. Let's do, I don't know, wind. How should we do wind? I don't know. Let's go Simone because he figured out water. I'm sure he can figure out wind as well. Cool, Simone. Wind is not good. If you want to model it well, it will be very random. Let's do something else. Say nuclear. Okay, but nuclear was built in the 60s. That's like everything is concrete. It's very drab. Let's build it in the 1860s instead. And the rest, as they say, is history. So that was from a one sentence mechanism. The next more T game that I did for More Than Dice that you'll find out in a year or two. That was literally just me sketching out a mechanism and then looking for an ancient civilization who built something that could be made out of those tiles that I designed for that mechanism. So some games come from mechanism. Some games come from a thematic story that I want to experience, and then looking for the mechanisms that tell it. And whether that's a historical theme or a particular, I don't know, sci-fi theme. Which one was these days my brain is a bit skewed because there is a third kind of way to work on games, that is the Imperium system that we're doing now. Because after doing 30 decks for Imperium Classics, Legends, and Horizons, when that project ended, I was like, Nigel, we've been designing Imperium decks for the past year and a half non-stop. What do I do with my life now? And that was the day we realized that this system, like not the exact game, but the logic, the way we create content for Imperium, can be applied for a lot of themes. Not retheming the game, but pick a theme we want. How would you model that theme using the concepts that the Imperium system knows? And once we found one or two good themes that we wanted to work on, I made a few calls to a few publishers, and since then we've worked on 3.5 other games inspired by the Imperium systems besides Imperium. So
does that mean that there's something in the works or very
yes,
close?
the first one is either getting announced soon or, depending on when this airs, have been announced a week ago. Game has been my absolute passion project for the past year or so. And there it's both mechanism, because we knew it would be a deck builder and we knew that cards have to represent a certain things, but it was much more important to be theme first. So the way I approached it was the feelings. It's like, I'm not trying to match in a narrative sense. And this is where those giant Mindclash games, Voidfall and Perseverance, helped a lot, because those games are what we call narrative mechanisms. Is that in Perseverance, if there's an action called go out for a patrol, that means that you have a token, or a soldier in this case, that you take from your player board and you put it out to something that's called a patrol. If you are exploring the jungle, then there will be a tile or a card that you will flip face up, and that will be the jungle, and you will put a thing there that will deal with the dinos around. So it's like, it's not enough to have setting-wise appropriate names which is the bare minimum you want thematically from a thematic-ish Euro game. But if I were to tell you the actions I've taken throughout the game, I would be telling you a story. And that's a method that these huge games at Mindclash allowed us to do. And that experience, once put on top of Imperium's system, which is already very theme driven, because in Imperium, every civilization's strategy is inspired by the uniqueness of the historical civilization and how attacky they are, how quickly, because writing is always represented by thinning your deck. Philosophy is always represented by the developing late game cards early. So depending on mathematics is increasing hand size. So what that civilization was good for tells you what kind of strategic tools the Civ will have. So taking these two toolkits, the Imperium's mapping concepts to mechanisms, so that if I give you that mechanism on 3 different things, you will feel that they're similar thematically, and the narrative mechanisms that from Mindclash games that you need to feel like you're doing what the name of the action says you're doing, and then designing a game for a theme that I know and love thoroughly. That's the most fun you can have,
That's so cool.
It sounds like you're enjoying your job.
And the other thing that I was telling to myself and to everybody who was listening is that I am so happy that I didn't try to do this 5 years ago, because I would have gotten it 65% right. And I am so happy that I can get it so much better today. So
Awesome.
That is so cool. Yeah.
these like Voidfall, or these are the kind of games that I feel like I've been preparing for. So
That's
Yeah.
cool.
So let's talk about Voidfall just a little bit, right? It blows me away, the complexity of some of your games and the interconnected mechanisms of these games.
choice systems, that's my term. And
Nice.
as in,
Well, can you talk a little bit about
yeah, because there are multiple kind of complexities. There is rule complexity. How long do I have to throw rules at you to learn a game? I believe, for me and many people around me, that as long as the rule is logical, as in when I start telling you, you know how I will finish the sentence, and B, automatically reminded of, so the component looks like to remind you of the thing that it needs to do. The flow of the game is built into the component, which is something that you can see on Voidfall very well. So basically, that there are no, don't forget that other rule moments in the game. Then the sheer amount of rules, I can take any number. If you don't ask me to remember to not forget something, then I can listen to for an hours of rule explanation easy. So that kind of complexity is something that these days more and more I'm focusing on, trying to not let it run out. But for me, it's much more important to be sleek, to be natural and easily remindable. And Voidfall has 40 pages of solid rules, but every single rule is, if you understood the first 20 page and you start reading the 21st page, then you know how the 21st page will end. And once you're played through one game, then the middle of the second game, you forget a rule. If you guess what that rule should be, it will be that. That's that. So that's that kind of complexity. There is another kind of complexity, the planning, the time complexity. That I am terrible at. Every time there is a new possible branch option on the planning tree, my brain tries to try all of them and then remembers that decision from option 3C and that decision from option 4D, and then I don't understand how I end up on D there. So you won't find games of mine that are very, you have to plan everything. You like Tolkien, brilliant game. I can't play it because I would need to have a pen and paper to plan my moves out and then execute it, because otherwise shenanigans I will sabotage myself easy. Or that was the first thing that I could think of. But there's a million great heavy games that just hurt my brain, and as I get older, I get worse at it. So I'm worried that I'll out-dumb Tricarian soon. And then the third one, and that's where I felt that I can do something that many didn't even try, that is choice richness. That is not how complicated the choice, that is not how many choices in a sequence you have to do, but how many motivations you have to choose A or choose B. And your own, not rules and restrictions that the game is making you jump through hoops if you want to pick A. No, it's like I want to do this action because it helps me doing that, but it helps me doing that. But if I do the other action, then and it's like everything interconnecting with everything naturally, and then try to make that up from as small cogwheels as possible, but explainable with as few big sentences as possible, if you see what I mean. And if you play it to you, the whole game is like this. The rulebook, 30 pages of seemingly very complex rules. Once you know what the game does, the summary is less than an A4 page. But the moment you try to take an action, is like, which action I want? All of them make sense. And Voidfall is an extension of this, the same thought process, or rather, my choice system thought process colliding with Nigel's toughness and tightness and trying to deal with all the problems kind of design. And that's how it ends up with. It's like, I think on turn one, almost every focus card is viable with the starting 4 houses. Maybe Temptation is only as your second card, not as your first. But that means that there are no bad directions to start with. Every direction is a valid direction. And then once you get there, then you suddenly don't care about those directions, and then you care about the 2 or 3 directions that's in front of you. And then every point of the way, there is a little bit of choice universe you want to understand. And the more you play the game, the more you understand how these click together, the more sense it's like a spidey sense tingling. Is like, I should push my strategy towards this way because somewhere late in the game I'll be happy that I've done this. So, and that's why my games tend to feel a lot scarier on first and second play than they actually are. But once you get over the hump, you want to play them a lot more than other games of similar weight you want to, because of how the choice systems start engaging your brain.
It's funny that you use the word scary, because I think that might have been how I felt playing Voidfall for the first time. There's just so many options and so many things to take in that game.
Which is why Mitchell designed the tutorial, which is exactly about taking the choices away from your first game so that you don't get that.
Yeah, and I thought that was done so well.
Yep, they do a great job with that. And I love how you also say, games that you have decisions to make. I love games that you get a hand of cards or you have choices in front of you and they're agonizing decisions. You're like, do I go this way or do I go this way? And I think your games do a great job with that. Voidfall and Acrony, anything that you design has those decisions, which is awesome.
And I like it best if any one thing can be used for exactly 2 things. Not more, not less, because if it's more, then you're just looking for things to cook with. If this thing can only be used for that thing, then it becomes like a recipe collection thing. But like the best example is the tiles in Nucleum. Okay, I need to build. Here's my tile. And at that moment, it suddenly becomes but I also need it on the map. But if I put it on the map, I won't have this tile next round. And there's a lot of reasons to put it on the map, and there's a lot of reasons to not put it on the map. And neither of them is a stronger or weaker move than the other. And And that's what makes it an interesting decision for me.
So you've worked with some amazing designers, Daniela Tassini, Simone Luciani, Nigel Buckle. I'm sure a number of others that I'm missing, but do you prefer to do co-designs with other designers, or do you like doing your own designs?
For me, the best way of thinking about things is talking about them. So I always need somebody to talk to, which means that even those few games that will be credited to only me, those are also technically co-designs. Just the person or persons I talked to were more like a group of people sounding and fine-tuning my idea as opposed to one person with an equal amount of contribution to mine.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I get an idea so clear that I can get it to 85% by myself,
Okay.
and then the development team can handle the rest. But which is the case of one of the ones I just finished. But for example, Tom and Tinsiu, the development team, once you put all the people in the development team together, they are one co-designer. But no one of them designed the game. So
yeah, that makes sense. You're kind of the guy for solo designs.
Yet another happy accident in my life. Yes.
Yeah. So is that something that you really enjoy, or would you rather focus more on your own designs, or do you enjoy coming in and being part of and doing the solo portion of a game?
All of the above. The fact that I became the solo guy happened completely by accident. Anachrony had a solo mode because we were trying to come up with stretch goals for the Kickstarter campaign, and Tuscany shipped the week before we had that meeting, and I was like, I don't know, that game has a solo mode, I can check it out what it does, and that was Morten Monrad Pedersen's first Automa, and I played it, and then there were a few things about it that was genius, and there was a few things about it I really hated, and I was like, what if I do something that does exactly the same, but I don't hate that little bit about it? And it had huge mistakes in it, which is why we redid it in Fractures. But that was already my first solo. I've never played any lesser solos before. And then it got out of hand when in 2018 I quit my boring day job and started doing this full time. And I went around to my friendly publishers and saying, hey guys, if each of you pay me this much money monthly, then I don't have to go to day job and then I can do this more. They were like, sure, what can you do for that money? And I was like, well, besides guaranteeing delivery of this and that, besides hunting you more people, besides editing your rule books, not just for my own games, and developing not just my own games, I don't know, I could design a solo mode for a few of them. And then the very first project that they didn't even ask for, I was just merely on the development team for Teotihuacan, and we finished 2 weeks before the deadline. And I just finished the solo mode for Dice Settlers because that was on Kickstarter, so that had to have a solo mode, whereas Teotihuacan was a retail game, so retail games don't need solo modes. Nobody buys retail games for solo modes, right? And I was like, but guys, we have 2 weeks left until the deadline. I can easily design a solo mode in 2 weeks. Can I? I need this much space on the punch board. Can I? And then Teotihuacan ended up 70 something on BGG. So suddenly I had 2 solo modes in the top 100. That's how I became the solo guy. At that point, I have played less than 10 times solo in my life. So,
oh wow!
Up until like a year or two ago, my total solo plays have been under 24 in my lifetime for sure. Lately, I found a few things that I like playing solo, mostly after adjusting some of my own designs to work for my own brain. But the fire that you see my brain doing right now, that design is a powered art, but solo mode creation it's mechanic work. It's engineering. It's I know how to tighten the screws on it. So when you say, do I enjoy it or would I rather design? Obviously, I would rather design, but obviously I enjoy it. So that's why I said that all of the above, because the fire in my brain, what I said that I can't not design, that means that that's always true. But having designed or co-created 40, 50, long lost count how many solo modes, it is very interesting how we can do more with less over each project, because obviously people want as little overhead for the solo modes. And while I believe for a solo mode to be interesting first and simple second, while many people do simple first, interesting second, and you get what you want, but I too want it to be as simple as possible. And how to make it simple is a skill that me and my team are learning each game as we go forward. And so, yes, it is very interesting. Personally, to me, the biggest benefit of doing the solo modes is I look at it as a marketing job. It's a marketing towards the customers because they see my name in 5 times as many boxes as they would otherwise. It's a marketing towards the publishers. There are several games of mine that exist because I could ask a publisher to make sure it exists after I designed a solo mode for that publisher. And great, this project ended. You like me now, right? So let's make this game. So it's a way to put my foot into the door.
I love that.
Yeah. When you're working on a solo mode, have you ever felt confined by the existing components and rule set? And has there ever been a time where, the base game was mostly done, you came in, do a solo mode, and like, guys, this isn't working, you need to change this about the base game? Has something like that ever happened? Or
it happened once, yes. I don't know if I don't know if it counts as bad mouthing, because they did fix 90% of the problems we raised, but that was because it was a game that was designed for 2 to 6 players, and the designers were mostly testing 4 and 5. And for us to design the solo mode, we had to play a bunch of 2-player games. And the 2-player game had some issues, and the moment we created the bot for it that was even more one-track minded than a human player would be, those issues became even bigger. And we were like, anybody who plays this game 2-player first, or God forbid solo first, will not like this game. And then the designer listened and went and up-tuned the 2-player game a lot. So it does happen, but I do want to clear up that myth that afterthought solo modes are bad. That is silliness. Every solo mode is done after the fact. That doesn't make it an afterthought. As in, every competitive automa is made after the fact. Obviously, there are the co-op-like solos, and that's something completely different. But when I design an automa, I am teaching the game to a logic system. And I can only do that if somebody can teach me the complete game. If the game is not fully complete, then what game am I learning? So the only difference is whether a publisher can commit to hiring me before the Kickstarter campaign or after the Kickstarter campaign, yet the audience sees the difference between, these publishers amazingly thought of the solo community, or, they're just tacking on a solo mode. So I've been telling people to stop this nonsense, because it doesn't matter at which point they hire me, I'm going to do my work over there 3 months later anyways. So
yeah, that's interesting. So I'm not a huge solo gamer, but I did play Undaunted solo, and that was a really cool experience, and it amazed me the complexity of it was really interesting to me, how it cascaded. Certain things would happen if you did certain things in the game.
Well, first of all, credit where credit's due. That works so well because David Digby has a lot of patience. I have during that project, I played Undaunted, I think 7 times, and there was only one scenario I played more than once. And I only played, I think, 2 or 3 scenarios. So I was creating the system. And then once the lead developer of the project could play 5 turns against the bot, with the bot never running into the wall, I was like, this is the system we're doing. And then handed the entire documentation over to David Digby. And then for the next 3 months, he proceeded to do 22 unique tweaks to the bot, depending on what the scenario's goal was for each side. And then halfway through, he had to switch to North Africa, which is completely asymmetric and has a lot more silliness in like crazy rules you have to adapt to. So yeah, so sure, I'm happy to take credit for the idea, but the heroics is not mine. The heroics is absolutely other David's, which is why I always make sure that other people are properly credited, because I know most people will remember my name at this point, but I would like them to start remembering other people's names too.
That's interesting. Absolutely.
Going forward, what themes, mechanics are you excited about exploring a little more? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? You obviously love your job designing games.
Yes. So I don't think I'll have a different job. I mean,
I hope not.
My 2026 games are either finished or almost finished. So any game I would come up with tomorrow would probably come out either late 26 or early 27 probably. So don't imagine very quick turnarounds here. Because good work takes time even from the publisher side. I have one crazy whipping horse, which is roll and write is a mechanism, not a game form, and the market is resisting this idea with tooth and nail. And I have done 2 games that, with an extreme opposite approach, try to say, here is a game that is a roll and write game that is not a roll and write game. Vengeance, Roll and Fight, and Roman Roll. Roman Roll is a medium heavy to heavy Euro where everything is done through rolling and writing, but it has a lot more to do with the heavier end of, I don't know, Shem Phillips's games or I don't like comparing my stuff to Uwe Rosenberg's, but those kind of games. While Vengeance, Roll and Fight is a real-time dice manipulation puzzle where everything you do gets written onto the board as you move. So they're both dice roll right, but they're not roll and write games. You don't roll, pick something off, get a bonus, roll, and you know what I mean. That game form that Gonshen's Clever and Railroad Inc. and what's the third one? I'm forgetting. Popularized, and then every other roll and write game just turned one new trick on it. They didn't like the jump from Dominion to Mage Knight in the deck builders. That never happened with roll and writes. Like nobody ever said, or nobody ever succeeded in taking it to the next level where it's not the point but a tool. Mindclash published the Astra. It's not a roll and write, but they do use pens for some very creative things. So I quite like that game. Anywho's, so that's something that I think I will keep returning to until I convince enough people that I am right and everybody else is driving the wrong way on the highway. So far, I found one person in the industry who didn't think me crazy, and that was Bobby Hill, the designer of Hadrian's Wall. So we've been chatting about it lately. Ask me 2 years from now if anything came out of that. Other than that, what else? I don't know. Right now, I'm working on so many deck builders because of Imperium, and so many Voidfall has so many work left in it forever and ever that I need a notebook just to remember what else I'm working on besides these 2 games. So yeah,
a lot of good stuff coming. That sounds awesome. Love it.
And if you want a recommendation of a game of mine that you might have not heard of and probably can't even get because the publisher is not doing great anymore, but if you can, then it's a really special thing. Like it was mostly an art project of mine. Defense of Procyon 3. Try to find it and see what happens when nobody tells me what I can and cannot do.
I looked at that one. I don't know. I only have so much money to go around for David Turczi games. I mean, they're all over my shelves already.
Yeah.
So we're huge fans. thank you so much for being on with us. It's been an absolute pleasure and good to talk to you.
Thank you.
David, is there any projects or anything you'd like to promote to our listeners that you're excited about that's either in the works or coming out soon or that you can talk about?
Well, Nucleum's first expansion, Australia, is coming out on either side of this airing. And without going into any further details, I can say we're definitely not finished with Nucleum yet. We have many ideas for it, and we gotta make sure that it's not fattening up the game, but keeping it fresh. We've already announced the Voidfall expansion. The new houses are looking very, very exciting, and we have a few new surprises that we haven't announced yet, and I'm not gonna.
Nice.
Imperium Horizons is out for a month and a half now, and the feedback and the people response have been very positive. So anybody listening who hasn't checked it out yet, now is the time to do so. And
Awesome.
the loud big release this year will be, as I said, and the more connoisseurs release will be a game called Keyside, which I co-designed with Richard Brees of the Keeper, Keyflower, Key Everything fame.
Awesome.
That will be on Kickstarter, small Kickstarter sometime in the next few months, and then physically in Essen. So if you want to see what kind of farming victory point scoring game I can make, then that's something different. Not everything has to be giant epic things. So yeah, I think those are the big things planned for this year.
Sounds awesome. Looking forward to all of it. That's great.
Yeah, thanks so much for your time, and it's been great to talk to you. And I'm sure our listeners will enjoy this. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks. That was great.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
So that was an awesome interview. I know I didn't get to participate in it, but it was so cool to hear all that David had to bring to the table with his solo designs, with his input or his hand in the industry and everything that he's done. Thanks, Kevin and Tyler, for taking the time to interview him. That was great.
That was awesome. Loved it.
It was that was an amazing experience. And just hearing his thoughts and his how he goes about game design was really cool.
Yeah, it was an awesome experience. Glad we could do it.
So I think we've talked a little bit about David Turczi. Let's talk a little bit more about the influence he's had in a game that we've played lately. A little game we said earlier, right? Voidfall.
Yeah, so he is the co-designer. I think Nigel Buckle is the primary designer on this game, Voidfall. And they've done other games too, Imperium Horizons, and
there's a few different Imperium games,
and Legends, and maybe something else that may have been announced. I don't know.
Maybe.
So yeah, this is a great design team, and we're going to kick it off with a rules overview or rules summary from Kevin.
Voidfall is designed by Nigel Buckle, David Turczi, and published by Mindclash Games with art done by Ian O'Toole. Voidfall is one of the most complex games we have ever played. To do a proper rules rundown, it would take about an hour. I'm not going to even attempt to give a rules rundown. What I will do is go over the theme of the game and then talk at a very high level how the game works. Mindclash did a great job of summarizing Voidfall. The following is directly from them. For centuries, the Novarks, descendants of the royal house of Novarkhan, have ruled with an iron fist over the feudalistic galactic empire of humankind, the Dominium. During this time, they brought stunning technological innovation and scientific advancements to their domain. This accelerated progression helped the Dominium reach and eventually inhabit even the farthest segments of the known galaxy, where new houses emerged to govern the outer sectors of the empire. As the House of Novarkhan grew in power, so grew the religious cult that surrounded them, proclaiming grim prophecies about an ancient cosmic being from another dimension, the Voidborn. Many thought it to be only a myth, but in truth, it was the Voidborn's dark influence that granted the Novarks the sheer knowledge to achieve rapid expansion for the Empire. While the cult of the Novarks envisaged eternal life through the otherworldly entity, the Voidborn's only intention was satiating its eternal hunger. And so, when the Dominium had achieved a vastness fitting the Voidborn's craving, interdimensional rifts opened at the heart of the Dominium to unleash cosmic corruption. As the House of Novarkhan and its followers welcomed the Voidborn and sought their false salvation, the entity infected and spread and seized control over the inner worlds. Now it is time for the remaining great houses to purge the galactic corruption, prevent the Voidborn from fully manifesting in our dimension, and to ultimately overcome the chaos as the new rulers of the Dominium. Voidfall is a space 4X game that brings the genre to Euro enthusiast tables. It combines the tension, player interaction, and deep empire customization of the 4X genre with the resource management, tight decisions, and minimal luck gameplay of an economic Euro. Win by pushing back the Voidborn in the solo co-op mode, or by overcoming your rival's influence and restoring the Dominium in the competitive mode, both using the same rule set and game system. Variability is ensured not only by multiple playable houses with their own strengths and weaknesses, but also by many different map setups for all game modes. As the leader of a Defiant Great House, you play through 3 cycles, each with a game-altering galactic event, a new scoring condition, and a set number of focus cards that can be played. Focus card decisions and sequencing is the centerpiece of the gameplay. By selecting 2 of their 3 impactful actions as you play them, you develop and improve techs, advance on your 3 house-specific civilization tracks, manage your sector's infrastructure, population, and production, and conquer new sectors with up to 5 different types of space fleets. Space battles are fought either against the Voidborn's infected forces, which are present as neutral opponents even in the competitive mode, or against other players. Instead of relying on the luck of a die roll, battles in Voidborn are fully deterministic and reward careful preparation and outsmarting your opponents. As we go through our review of Voidfall, we'll discuss in detail rules and mechanics that should help give you a deeper understanding of how the game plays. That's a very high-level overview of the game. Let's get back to the table to see what we thought of Voidfall.
So thanks, Kevin, for the rules for Voidfall, the game we're reviewing today. Let's jump into this review. How we do our reviews is we like to rate them on a scale of, I think it's 0 to 100 now? Is that what we're deciding?
You sound so excited about this scale.
Yeah, really
it's
fantastic.
0 to 100, which clearly is the best scale.
Best scale, always. Yes, so 0 to 100. We'll go through our thoughts about this game, and then we'll come and all give our rating of Voidfall towards the end. But to start us off, let's talk about the production quality of Voidfall.
So I will say we got the deluxe Kickstarter
Galactic
edition.
box or whatever.
I think it's called the Galactic box.
Yeah.
Both Tyler and I. And it's off the charts, like amazing.
Yeah.
Right. It's probably the production of it is it could be the best of any game that I own. It's that good. It's amazing.
I mean, you got the triple layer player boards that you can slide in whatever faction you're playing with. All the components are awesome.
All the minis that
You've got the trays that you can hand around to other people because it was well thought out about there's so much table space taking up of all of these components, but they did their best to make it so that it's accessible to everybody no matter where you're sitting at the table.
Yeah, those trays are amazing. Like the agenda cards. Yeah, you can just pick up that whole tray and pass it to the other side of the table. Or the technology cards, it's the same thing. So a lot of times when we play games that are huge games, we take a picture of the cards at the other side of the table so that we can see what they are. If you can just pass them around easily, that is just awesome.
Yeah, I can't believe
that.
we haven't seen this show up in other games. For as many games that we play, this is a brilliant idea.
I completely agree.
And maybe it exists in other games, but the ability to take that tray or both of those trays and pass them around when you're looking at taking that action and purchasing one of those cards, It's brilliant.
I get why publishers may not do this
because
of
the
cost, right?
Yep,
but I still don't understand why we're not seeing third-party kind of vendors coming up with like generic stuff.
Oh,
like this for
absolutely.
like, hey, you want a
I'm gonna
card
go
tableau to be able to go pass this around?
I'm going to go
Great
start
idea.
an Etsy store right now.
Yeah, fantastic. And for me, I'd gladly pay a premium to have that in my games.
Yeah.
And like you said, Tyson, I know why publishers don't do it. And the retail version of this game, I'm sure, doesn't have that. I don't know for sure, but
I don't think it does.
I don't think it does.
But
for me, I'm really glad in the version that I got that it has that.
But as a player who does not own it and playing it, and even though I haven't set anything up and done any of the setup for this game, if I didn't have that to play with, it would have made this game a lot more
A slog.
It would have added more time to it. I would have either had to have taken pictures of multiple things, or I would have had to get up from my seat, walk around the table to a certain spot, and look at it, which in some instances can be like, oh, you're looking at the technology cards, and look, it's like...
I mean, you get that kind of same thing when you pass
it, you do.
Pass a tray. Oh, what are you doing next?
Yeah.
But like, I don't...
But you can ask to pass it at the start of your turn, and
right.
It doesn't take long to narrow down which one you actually want.
Yeah, and it'll be the fourth focus card you play or something, yeah.
So, but like as a player, just playing it, not owning it, I don't know that I would really want to play without some of the deluxeified stuff. And that's not like I played Anachrony for years without any of the miniatures. Like I have no problem, without any of the exosuit miniatures.
Yeah.
I never played with them. I never owned it until like a couple of years ago where I picked them up. But like I was content playing just with the cardboard pieces. That was not a problem for me. And so I'm usually fine with that for the most part. But in this instance, because of the functionality that these components add to the game, I think it is of significant value.
And it just, man, when it's set up on the table, it looks so epic.
It really does.
The big tiles that you use to build the map, the color scheme is just amazing. And I will give a plug to the Game Topper mat that I have that is the space mat that has the exact same color scheme as the game, and it looks like it's part of the game. It's just seeing it all set up is just it's really cool. I absolutely love it.
And you've got the how you track your resources and your production.
Oh yeah,
it's this big 1, 2, 3. It's got 10 dials on it, and it's one big piece, and it's awesome. You got triple layered sector tiles that you're putting out. All the installations and the guilds that you put out, at least in our version, they're metal, chunky. It's amazing. It's beautiful. I love a ton of Ian O'Toole designs, and this one might be my favorite.
It's my favorite for sure.
Yeah, it's just fantastic. It's awesome.
The iconography is great. Like once you figure it out, there's a lot of iconography.
It is.
Once you've played to maybe your third. For me, it was the third time I played. It kind of clicked, right? And it's like, okay, this all makes sense. It didn't mean that I didn't reference the glossary during that game, but most of the iconography, I could just look at it and say, okay, I know what this means, right? Which is for a game that's this big and this complex, that's a huge, undertaking. Well, and I think it was done really well.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think there are many artists, graphic designer combos out there like Ian O'Toole to create such a cohesive experience as he does. And I think without that, this game again,
it would be a nightmare.
Would have been a nightmare.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there are a few people that could pull this off from a design, a UI or the look and all the iconography. I mean, he did an amazing job.
So what about, is there anything about the components or production quality that we don't necessarily like, or we think is something to be aware of at least?
Yes.
I have one small little nitpick.
I'm wondering if it's the same one as me.
So to track your glory, you have these little dials that you spin. Okay. they're too close to each other because I think in my copy and when we're playing your copy, when you spin one side, so you get 5 glory, it touches the other dial and can spin that dial.
So when you're spinning the ones dial, it touches the tens
dial. And it happened a few times for me where all of a sudden I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not 28. I'm 38. It's spun this other. So you have to be careful of that. Just to put a little more space between those two dials, right?
Yeah. I found that if you just put your thumb on the dial that's adjacent, then you don't have to worry about it. But
if you, that's why I said very minor nitpick.
Yeah.
But you got to make sure, I guess, to put your thumb on there so you have the accurate score.
Yeah. My complaint is the big stack.
That's what I was
of
wondering.
Separated faction cards with the technology cards. I think that could have been done better. And that's more of how it was packaged together. So you have a faction in each little tray and all the trays stack on top of each other. But when you go to set it up, it's a pain to both find the faction and the corresponding technologies that are available for that scenario. It's just a pain. And I got to the point where it's like, okay, I'm getting a card case. I'm going to put all the technologies in there in alphabetical order, and I'm going to put all the factions in alphabetical order. And they're what are they called?
Focus cards.
The
Fallen House
cards. The Fallen House cards.
Yeah.
I'm going to put those all with the faction card, and then have the technology separate in one big case and fill it in there. And I think maybe there's a rhyme or there's a methodology to making their existing setup work for you, but I hated it.
You know what? I set this game up last Thursday and Tyson and I played, and I remember the first time I set it up hating that, but I didn't mind it.
Really?
Yeah, I thought it worked out better than I remembered because we had the factions and I was able to easily find the factions, and then the Fallen Houses were there, and I was using the Fallen House technology cards. So everything that I had pulled out was there.
It's a little overwhelming the
close for
first
me.
couple times you play. Like setting up is
yes. That's why I said the first time I'm like, this is ridiculous. I can't believe this. This is crazy. But then the second time it wasn't quite as bad. But I can absolutely see what your gripe is.
I was wondering if it's going to be the degree of familiarity you already have with the game. If you're exposed to it and this is the first time and it in the rules is telling you, now get these cards, and you're like, okay, are they all separated into these different stacks, or like where do I find them?
It's not even your first play. It's when you unpackage the game and it's like, where do I put all these cards? I don't even know, I got to the point where the last few times I set it up and put it away, I was just taking the technology cards, putting them in alphabetical order, and putting them in the 4 cases that are the starter factions where there isn't any additional cards. And so they're all together. And then when I go to set up the scenario, it's like, okay, I need robotics and I need this one. And I just go through alphabetically, find them, and then I've got them, right?
That works.
Ultimately, I think that is a nitpick to an extent because, but I think it's an important one to point out because of the degree of complexity that is involved in the setup, and that you are, no joke, spending almost an hour trying to set this whole game up.
If you're doing it by yourself, especially if it's a more than 2-player game, because you're setting out these sector tiles. You're making a big map. Each tile has different things on them. You've got to put glory. You've got to put the different tokens on them.
You have to assemble the Corvettes.
Yeah, you got to put the Voidfall on them, and there is a lot that goes into setup.
Yeah, and it can be tedious. Like the first time you do it, I was pulling my hair out.
Yeah.
But like I mentioned when we played last week, I actually found it kind of enjoyable to set it up, which completely surprised me.
Yeah.
Because I had such a bad experience the first time. But I liked that process.
I think the familiarity helps with that.
And that's exactly what it was, because this was the 4th time I had played it, and I was just super excited to get this scenario picked and played, and seeing what Fallen Houses were in there, and what
Ironically,
factions.
it was the same scenario that I had played the last time before.
We'll get there. Yes. I should have checked first, but still, it turned out awesome. But
And
yeah,
it's-
I kind of enjoyed that process. But yeah, it is long.
It's
It
also
really
much
is.
better to set up a 2-player game.
Yes,
And
yes.
because when you're setting up a 3-player game, or you're putting stuff out on the table, and it's like, okay, how do I rearrange
can all
this
fit?
and rotate this and shift this so that everything will fit on a table?
Well,
So you can have your great room for your great house, and room for your technologies,
Yes.
and room for the stuff you're putting on the bottom. Your
And
agendas.
we don't have
and-
small tables.
No, we don't.
well, and with both of those comments, I think it's important to recognize that once you've started, you're kind of committed to whatever scenario that you've done. So like you
yes.
don't want somebody to either back out of your play or somebody to
Yes.
say that, hey, I have played this scenario before. Can we play a different
or
one?
10 minutes before you're supposed to play, oh, sorry, I can't make it.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
And now you got to shift down to a 2-player scenario when you had
That's a
set
big
up
change.
a 3-player scenario.
Yeah, so we reference this, but Tyson and I played a scenario. I was super excited to play this one. I picked one that was a complexity of 3 and had what are the two criteria? Aggression
Yes.
of 3. I'm like, okay, that's perfect. 3 and 3. And he gets there and he's like, well, this looks familiar. So it was the one that he had played the previous Saturday at a 3-player count, and we ended up playing it at a 2-player,
okay.
which it ended up being fine. But we had this discussion of like, hey, do we just set up a different scenario? We're like, no,
There's no chance.
we're not.
There's no chance.
We are not doing that because it's going to add another half hour, 45 minutes to our play.
Well,
time,
I
you know?
think, Tyson, you mentioned when you played with Logan and I was like, this is a game that you'd like to have a board game butler for,
Yes.
right? That somebody that just sets it up for you and takes it down for
They
you.
teach you the rules. They give you the scenario. They give you the information of what you need, and then you play.
Yeah. I mean, it's and especially the first couple times, it is daunting.
it does get better with repeated plays for sure.
Absolutely.
But, yeah.
So, what do we think? Anything else we want to talk about the components, or should we move into gameplay?
The components, the production is just off the charts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
It's a sight to behold. Once it's all set up and ready to go, you are immediately excited to get this game played. So let's talk about the gameplay of this game. What is Voidfall? Why do you like the gameplay of this game? What about the gameplay do you like?
I love how all the great houses are different, and they are, in a lot of cases, vastly different. So you have focus cards, and you have 9 focus cards that you can play with during each round. And some of the great houses actually swap out those focus cards with other focus cards, making them play completely different. You have access to different things.
That is so cool.
I think it's awesome.
I love that part of the game, and every great house you play has a different board that you're going to play. So you're going to focus on different things. One of mine that I played, and I can't remember the name of it, but it allowed me to move cubes over.
Yarrick.
Yes, Yarrick, that I could then deploy. And it was that middle track, and I got all the way to the end of that, and I was able to get all kinds of deployed units out into the board, which was unique to me and what I was doing, which was really cool. And I love that aspect of the game.
Well, and I got to play Yarrick as well, and each faction has a special house ability on top of that,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And Yarrick's in particular allowed you to take the reclaim tokens or I can't remember the other
reclaim tokens.
Yeah, and
To do
use
your third
those
action.
to do a third action, which a third action is hard to come by in a lot of other instances. So it's cool to see how each faction tweaks a gameplay style a little bit and then exploits it and lets you really dive into a specific style of play in a different way. And it really does feel like it forces you into a different style of play, because I've played 4 different factions and every single one I felt like I had different play experiences with.
And not only that they're different, but each faction has 2 different choices.
Yes.
You can start out with different technologies with a faction, and depending on which technology you choose, you start out with different resources, and you have a different path that's kind of laid out for you, which is really cool. So really, each faction has 2 different styles of play, potentially.
Yeah, and I love how, I mean, it is a complex game. It can feel very overwhelming, but the back of that mat gives you pointers on things that you maybe want to focus
Just
on.
take a picture before you set up your player board.
Yes, because you're going to flip it over and you're going to slot it in there and you're not going to be able to see it anymore. But which we did. We took pictures of them, which is great. But it gives you a little bit of a direction. It's like, okay, you don't have to do that. But I very much appreciated the tips of what I could focus on because there's so much in this game. And I think it did a good job of kind of guiding you to things that maybe you should look at.
Well, and I don't think variability is anything this game is lacking by any means, but the fact that you can have the same faction played. Kevin just mentioned that he and I had already played the same scenario that Tyler, you, me, and Logan ended up playing. And so the same factions were available there. And I couldn't play a faction that I hadn't seen. So what I ended up doing is playing a faction that I had seen, but try the other strategy that I had yet to see played yet. And so it allowed me to still discover new content, even though I've seen the content. And I thought that was really cool.
And the way that game played out, it played out completely different
absolutely.
than your previous play, right? So even though you're playing the same scenario, if you're playing it at a different player count, it's going to have a little bit of a different setup. And that the way that the cards come out and the way the game unfolds is going to be completely different every time, even if you're playing the same scenario, right? Which is that variability off the charts, right? Yeah,
for sure.
I love that the player boards have different tracks that you go up. I mean, different rewards on the 3 tracks. What are the 3 tracks?
Economy, knowledge. There are 3 different tracks.
But it's they're actions that you can take that are on your cards, and when you go up on these tracks, you're getting rewards, and they are so unique from faction to faction, and I think that's just really cool. It's just one more thing that makes it so asymmetric and so much fun to explore a new faction.
Well, and I love the comboing that goes on with those tracks, right, in particular. And then on top, there's a lot of comboing in this game. And if you've listened to this podcast for any amount of time, you know that we love to have different combo action style things. And I like that the core mechanism of the game, playing a card and taking 2, maybe 3 actions on it, is going to give you different things to do, but that core mechanism, depending on what you're playing, you can also combo that card with agenda cards so that you can take maybe a 4th action, and if you do it comboing well enough, you can maybe get your track sliding up and now do a 5th or 6th extra action, and so like you can really feel like you're maximizing your turns to points that it just feels like I just did something really powerful and really cool, and it makes me feel like that turn was worth all the setup that I've done in any other turns.
Yeah, and I love that setup, right? So each galactic event card will tell you how many focus cards you get to play in the round. And I got 5 focus cards that I can play. Then looking at my hand, it's like, okay, I want to accomplish this thing this round. How am I going to do that with this group of cards, right? I can take 2 actions per focus card, maybe 3. I want to do this. I need to do this. I need to go up on this track.
If I can also do these things, great.
Exactly. This card lets me do it, but this card also lets me do it, but it gives me a better action. But I don't have the resources in order to do that. So I got to take this action first. But how do I get, I can get them here. And it's like, whoa, my God. But that puzzle and trying to figure out that puzzle is so rewarding and so exciting when you get it to work. Right. And I love the beginning of each round and trying to figure that out.
Well, and I love that there's a variable number of actions that you can do each phase or each era or whatever, right?
You can't anticipate it until the card is flipped over.
Yeah, at the beginning of it. And then okay, I've got 6 actions this time, or I only got 5 this time.
Right.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And I love we're getting back, this gets back to the production, but that board that walks you through the steps of each phase.
The round order.
Awesome. It's amazing.
Yep.
And it just makes it so easy to understand the flow of the game, right?
Yep.
Yeah. No. And having all of that iconography kind of cohesively put together allows you to understand very quickly those types of actions that you were talking about, Kevin, about that whole setup, because I can see, oh, this symbol matches this symbol. So even if I don't really know all the symbols, I can start to figure it out. And it makes that setup process a lot easier than I think it does in some other games, potentially.
Yeah. I love that there are multiple ways to play this game. You can go totally aggressive, building up your military, doing, taking over a bunch of sectors, or you can take it easy. You can kind of be a little reclusive, build up your production, your economies, and just produce and get a ton of points from that. I don't know. I love that there are multiple paths to victory with this.
Well, and along that line, you have a variety of technologies that are going to change from scenario to scenario, and they're going to do different things for whatever strategy you may have or may want to do. And I find it really rewarding to have those different options that you can take, or different paths of do I want to be economic or do I want to be aggressive? And there are technologies there to further supplement that so that I can enhance it. It's not just your faction that's going to be, oh, this is an economic faction. It's, okay, I can make this an economic faction, and then I can compound that with technologies. And then there are agendas that are going to further support that by doing different things and giving me bonus actions.
But there are also defensive technologies that you can get that even though you're going the economy route, you're still protected just enough that you don't have to really worry about losing a bunch of sectors.
I'm in a turtle here because I've got the defensive technologies that I'm protected more. So go attack Tyson instead of me type of thing. Yeah.
Which I think that is fascinating too, because it gets into the aggression part of this game to some extent. And Voidfall does for me similar to what Scythe did for me, right? Yep. In the terms of the threat of combat is oftentimes far more impactful than the actual outcome of a combat. And it's that, where am I putting my forces? Where am I setting things up? What am I going to prepare for? Something that could happen, and I have to make sure that I'm well set up. But most of the time, it's really that Cold War kind of vibe of, is this going to happen or isn't it going to happen?
We had that in the last game that we played. There's this super juicy sector that would have gotten me, whoever attacked it would have gotten a ton of points. And then it had guilds in there that comboed really well with my agenda cards. But if I would have gone in there, it was heavily fortified. It would have wiped out almost everybody that I brought into that battle. And then I would have been so weak that Tyson could have come in and just wiped me out after that, right? So that whole decision of, oh man, I get a ton of points here, but it leaves me weak. And then what's Tyson going to do? He's deploying all of his forces there as well. He's got a lot of people. I'm just going to go up here to the safe bet, right, and get this other sector, which also gives me a lot of points. But that whole, like you said, that whole Cold War thing. We had a standoff in this sector, and what's going to happen?
Well, in most of the game, we stayed in the same areas, having a certain amount of units in those areas for the potential eventuality that could have occurred. But those units, could they have been used somewhere else more effectively? But if I had removed them, then would you have done something, right? And so it was all of these decisions.
Yeah. Well, and then generally, if someone attacks someone else, they're now very weak in that spot, and then they're an open target, right, or an easier target. So
and you always have to keep in the back of your mind the skirmish that's going to come at the end of the round with the Voidborn, because you don't want. Everything's deterministic. You know exactly what's going to happen, but you have to make sure you're not too weak in an area that's adjacent to a Voidborn where they're going to take you out and you're going to lose guilds. You're going to lose, all your stuff.
Yeah. But it's interesting, right? Because we had that happen in the last game Kevin and I played.
And you didn't want it to happen, but you just miscalculated.
I miscalculated. And this has happened to me on multiple occasions in multiple games where I just didn't keep track of it and I miscalculated and I made a mistake. But the really interesting thing was that my faction at the time gave me the ability. It was the same faction, Tyler, that Logan had, where you have Voidborn are more likely to corrupt your area and have more strength against you.
They get +1, basically.
But if you succeed, they give you more points. And then we talked about, Kevin, you already talked about the cards being unique per faction. So my unique card was this invasion card that allowed me to go invade Voidborn sectors. And for every fleet that I destroyed of a Voidborn, I would earn victory points. So it actually became in my favor that when they took me out and reclaimed a sector, it allowed me to go back and reconquer them, and I ultimately got a lot more points out of it.
Happy accident.
I was like, oh, that really worked. And it gave me I can't tell you how many times I had double snap moments in this game, more consistently than I think any other game of late that I've played. And I love that about this game.
Yeah, it was cool. And you were racking up the points in that game. Another thing that I like about the game is that it doesn't feel like you're ever out of it. You can make a big charge at the end, right? Because you were leading that game. You ended up winning the game, but you had a pretty sizable lead for most of it. And then at the end, I was able to make some good plays, and I came back and within 10 points at the end.
It was
which
really
was really
close.
cool.
I had a similar experience with my last game with Logan. He was leading like crazy the whole game, and he still ended up winning, but I closed the gap, and it felt really good. Like I had some really powerful turns on that last era. What is it called? Is it an era, phase, galactic
round? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
let's call it a round.
Yeah, the galactic round. It just felt amazing, and I made I had like 1.5 I had one turn where I scored like 60 points or something, and it was awesome.
Well, that was similar to the game before that me and Logan had played as well, where Logan was killing us the whole game. He had a ton
and then he kind of pittered out at the end.
He didn't continue his through the last couple of turns, and then you and I were able to catch up, and then we ended up being able to be very close to one another in the end. And I love that almost every game we've played, the point distribution has been 10 to 15 points
pretty
disparity
close.
For all players. Yeah. There's been one
a
game
couple
where that
exceptions,
wasn't,
I think, but
I think that was due to miscalculations.
It's a cycle, by the way.
Cycle.
3 cycles.
Yes.
right?
That's awesome. Thank you.
Sounds
Glad we could clear that up.
Yeah, that one didn't even cross my mind.
Right. Another thing I like is the short-term and the long-term planning in this game. So each galactic event card that gets flipped over, you have a scoring condition for that cycle, right? And sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't, but it gives you something to focus on for that cycle, right? Then you have your agenda cards that kind of push you in a direction, and you're going to be picking up more agenda cards. That's more of a long-term planning. But that tactical nature of the game where it's like, okay, I've got this new opportunity to score that can get me a lot of points. Do I kind of shift gears a little bit and focus on that to try to maximize that cycle scoring is, I think, super interesting.
I think it is cool. There are times where a card flips over and it's like, I don't have a chance of getting either of those scoring conditions, and that doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
And that's a random thing that sometimes the randomness of it will favor one of the factions over the other based on how a player is playing it, right?
But I think that's usually compensated by whatever style faction you're doing. If you focus on the points that you can earn with your faction, oftentimes it can offset that, or at least that's been my experience.
Yeah, or there's definitely points all around to be had, but it doesn't feel great when a galactic cycle card flips over
and you get nothing out of it.
And even if you worked towards, there was 1 or 2 rounds cycles that I've played of this game, and I've got 5 or 6 plays, right, where a card flipped over. And I knew that even if I worked at it going after either of those scoring conditions, I wouldn't have been able to get either one of them. If I would have spent my whole every single card working towards that reward.
So does that give?
And it's like, well, I'm not even. Why even bother?
So if there's somebody around the table that can get that, does that give them an insurmountable advantage?
I don't think insurmountable.
Or can you focus on something else that's going to give you roughly an equal amount of points in the end, right?
I don't think it's insurmountable. It just doesn't feel good when they got easy points for maybe doing next to nothing because they've already built out something that does it for them.
So yeah, when we played, there was a card that said if you had 3 fleet power in an uncorrupted sector, you get a certain amount of points, right? And that flipped over in the last round, and I was distributed pretty well I had to move people around, but I was able to get that and maximize that. And then I had an agenda card that gave me points for doing the exact same thing. So I could see how that maybe is a little frustrating for people who weren't set up for that, and that just got flipped over randomly.
Yeah.
So no, I could see that. It was exciting for me, but
and it is, and I've had that same frustration a couple of times because I look at it and I can't do anything, or at the end of the round, in the earlier games, I forgot about it a couple of times, and so I didn't work towards it at all. And I'm like, well, everybody else just got 10, 12 points out of this thing, and I didn't. But I did find that if I had focused on that, it would have detracted from some of the other stuff that I was doing. But it doesn't take away from it feels like those are easier points for some people than others.
Yeah, I mean, if it flips over and someone's basically already going to get the reward from the start without doing anything, and you don't have a chance of getting it because you've gone in a different direction, that doesn't feel good.
So we're kind of into maybe some things that we don't like here about the game. Is there anything else that maybe we don't like as much about this game?
So as much as I love like the choices that you have of what cards to select, and I'm planning my next 4 turns and exactly the sequence of actions that will let me do what I want to do, that can add some AP and some long turns happen.
It can.
And I think that is a slight negative. As much fun as it is to figure out those combos and the sequence of how you're going to do it, and you still might adjust that up by your next turn or whatever, I do think there is some long turns that go on in this game.
For sure.
I know
and there
that
can be
I
some
was
downtime.
part of that too, right? I mean, I think that it's hard not to take some long turns in this game.
Yeah, and even in the 2-player game that Tyson and I just had, it took, 3.5 hours maybe?
Yeah.
It was a long play just for a 2-player game,
wow.
right? And I think both of us had some long turns for whatever reason on that game. So
We definitely did have more long turns in it. And it's because I think personally there's so much that goes into it. I'm investing potentially 4 hours into this game, right? I don't want to put effort into a turn that is not my best effort to some extent, right? So like, because it's such a long investment into the game, I want to maximize what I'm doing. So I think that enables or lends to that whole AP side of that. But on top of that, the negative for me, or at least the feel bads that I've had in this game, came when I made a miscalculation. Mm-hmm. And I don't, because it's taking so long already, I made a miscalculation and I do something that I was like, I didn't think about that. And then I don't want to take it back because I hate the feeling of taking back a move, right?
that was my last turn.
Right, exactly. That was my last turn.
How do we unwind
But
this?
they're super complex to unwind.
Exactly.
Right?
Even if you wanted to unwind it, like that's going to take a lot of time. But then if I do unwind it, then it's going to add additional time to refigure out what I'm going to do to fix that. And so at that point, it just felt like, well, I made a mistake. I'll own the mistake. I know I could have made difference. I ended up in one game losing out on, I think, 20 points because of one dumb mistake that if I had like done one action differently, I would have gotten those 20 points. And that one, the point disparity between us was the largest disparity I think I'd seen in any of my plays. And so it felt bad because I had invested so much time, effort, and energy in everything that on my last turn I made a miscalculation that made such a egregious error.
But that's not a fault of the game necessarily. But going into it, you just need to know that there's a lot of moving parts to this game, and there's a lot of things to keep track of, right? And there's a lot of chance to make miscalculations,
and you got to be okay with that.
And you have to be okay
right.
with
like
that.
enjoy the experience for what it is, rather than the fact that you just made a blunder that cost you
potentially the
points.
game. And it is a kick in the gut because, like you said, there's a lot of time and energy invested in a game like this.
There was one game that we played, and I think it was the same one that you had this happen to you, where I think Kevin won by like 2 points.
It was that one, yeah.
And I went to bed, and for like 2 hours, I analyzed in my head.
What could I have done differently?
And I figured out something I could have done differently that wouldn't have taken points away from me, but would have given me enough. I love that this is a game that you think about.
Oh yeah,
after you finish playing.
Absolutely.
And you analyze and not only what you did, but what other players are doing really well, right? And that's really fun.
So yeah, talking about more things that we like about this game, which there's a lot more we like than we don't like.
We often creep back into that space when we're doing our reviews.
Yeah. So there are very few games for me where when I'm playing the game, my heart just starts racing because I'm so excited to get to my next turn, right? I remember I used to play a ton of Power Grid. And when you get to the end of Power Grid in the last round, I get so excited because I don't know if I'm going to have enough to win. If it comes down to a tiebreaker, am I going to have enough money? And I remember my heart would just race and just
finish your turn so that I could see if my plan works out.
Yeah, just for excitement, And I get that feeling in this game. It's like, I can't wait for my next turn to come around. I'm so excited to do this, to get my plan and see if my plan works. And the last 2 times I played the game, I've had that experience where my heart's just racing because I'm so excited about it. And the fact that this game does that is amazing. I absolutely love that.
Yeah, it is. And those last few turns are just the decisions that are involved are just so exciting to figure out. And when you find out exactly how to do what you're trying to do by sequencing it in the right way or comboing actions, it just feels so good. And even if you don't end up winning the game, it feels amazing.
Well, like the last game we played, I didn't think I could get to the end of the track. And it was worth like 24 points to get to the end of the track. I'm like, I just don't have the cards to do it. And then I saw how to do it. And I'm like, whoa! It's so cool. And I'm like, I was sacrificing some other things that I could have done, but that was the most beneficial thing for me to do. And the fact that I could figure that out was just super exciting and super fun.
Yeah, I didn't think you were going to make it when you were doing that, Kevin. And I was excited for you that you were able to get that. And because it made it feel like, oh, I got to make my turns worthwhile too. Because if you can take 24 points in one turn, I've got to make sure that I'm not petering out and slowing down like with Logan when that last round, like he couldn't find the way to get as many points out of it. And that can be it. Where you win or lose a game. And I love that because the game, it's a 4X game, which we haven't even really touched on the fact that it does really well at the 4X part of it. And if you're focusing on exploring or expanding or exploiting the resources or doing any of that stuff, like it makes for a really fun experience. And you've got to maximize that over this long duration. And I think there's some real value in that.
Is there anything else we don't like?
Just what we've already touched on, the setup.
I had
hard to get to the table because of the length, that type of thing.
I had one faction that I played with that I felt like was a complete dud.
Oh, really?
And it just wasn't fun to play, and I would avoid playing with that one in the future. But other than that, I feel like...
Which faction was it?
I think it was the Astorians.
It wasn't Chivius?
No, it was the Astoran faction.
Oh, I haven't.
And they give you tons of upkeep and not that... I can't remember what the reward you get for your faction ability, but you have 2 additional upkeep every cycle. And that was just problematic, especially
you just need to focus on food, right, at that point.
Right. There's times where you play this game and you have tons of resources and you never even have to think about your how you're going to pay for some of the actions. And then there's other times where it's like just barely eking
You're
by.
squeaking by.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it was one of those games for me. I like to get agendas out early, which then also adds to your upkeep. But I also was in a situation where I had expanded on the board. I had a ton of upkeep on the board, and it was like it just totally killed any momentum that I had. And I was taking negative points every cycle almost. So I don't know. I think aside from that one, all the factions that I've seen played or have played feel really well balanced. And maybe I just need to explore it more and try it again. But it wasn't my favorite.
I think it's interesting that an expansion is coming for this game. What? Yeah. Like there's so much to explore in the base game that an expansion feels a little bit daunting. I'm excited for it, and I'm sure I'll pick it up because more variability to an already amazing game is probably a good thing, right? But there's so much to explore just in the base game. Right?
Well, and I think it's worth mentioning all of our plays were competitive games.
Yes.
You can play a cooperative game.
Yep.
There's also a solo play. Obviously, it's David Turczi, so there's solo play there. We didn't explore that. There's just so much content and so much there. It's just hard to get to all of it.
Well, and I feel to 4 hours of play likely each time you do it. So it's a commitment to that may not be a negative, but that may be a thing that deters a lot of potential people.
Yeah.
Even with that playtime though, I want to play it.
I do too.
Absolutely.
Like talking about it now, I want to play it.
Well,
Absolutely.
2-player, Logan and I got it down to almost 2 hours.
Nice.
And that is a win. And that doesn't include the setup time, but even our setup time was getting faster, especially when we're both doing it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That just makes a huge difference. And then same thing with taking it down. Yeah, even with the duration of play, I want to play this a lot.
Well, it sounds like a good way to let's wrap this up with our final thoughts and talk about where we each stand with this. Who wants to kick us off with our final thoughts?
I'll go. Clearly, I'm a big fan of this game. I mean, there's very few things that I don't like about this game. I love all the great houses. I love the variability, how the tracks are all different, the special abilities of the great houses. Everyone that I've played, I've just had a blast exploring. I like how we've mentioned that it's the threat of battle than actual battle. It's the Cold War aspect of the game. Or you can actually go out and try to exterminate everybody, right? You can do that. Or it can just be the threat. You know, there's so much. It's a 4X game, and there's so many different ways that you can play it and so many different directions that you can go. The focus card, the card play is just amazing. How the decisions that you need to make on what cards you play. The agenda cards are all different. How you're going to focus getting points, because that's how you're going to win, is just super interesting. This game just excites me, and I get excited to play it. It's just fantastic. It could be my favorite Mindclash game at this point. I don't know. I need more plays of it, but I could see this overtaking Anachrony for me. It's that good. So as far as final rating goes, on a scale of 0 to 100, I think I'm going to give it a 95.
Whoa. All
Yeah.
right. Awesome.
Yeah. It's
I like
fantastic. I love it.
Yeah. No,
it's an amazing game.
I agree with everything you said.
Yeah.
So I'll go next. I agree with everything you said as well. Those were a lot of the same points that I had. One thing that I think that I love about this game, and I have to make the comparison because I've played both. I love the Euro style play in Voidfall, and I've played Twilight Imperium, and it's a similar epic experience. And I really did enjoy my play of Twilight Imperium, but it ended up being 8 hours. I could potentially, if I can get a 2-player game down to 2 hours, I could potentially play 4 games of Voidfall in here in the time it would take me to play Twilight Imperium. For me, Voidfall is the superior 4X game because of the Euro style gameplay and because the lower playtime. Now, when I say lower playtime, that doesn't mean this is a low playtime. If I had to knock this game on anything, it's got to be the playtime, because how often am I going to be able to get this to the table is the real question I have to ask here. Do I want to get it to the table every time I play a game night? Yeah, like I think this is a game that if we had lifestyle games or played lifestyle games, I could see this being the game that I want to come back to over and over and over and over again and explore and really get the full experience. I want the expansion content. I want to play the cooperative side of it. I want to see what's going on there. The one negative or potential negative that I didn't mention, though, is that I don't know that the theme is really like the narrative portion of it really drew me into this game. I feel it in what I play, but I don't like see it in a lot of things. But I love, regardless, the theme of this game. Like I love what is going on. I love that you can see the Voidborn and understand contextually what they're representing and what they're doing. You can see the threat of war. You can see all of this stuff, and I love that about the game, that I can create the narrative in my head, and I can feel like this is a 4X epic kind of economy that I'm building. Or a military faction that I'm building. I love that about this game. It is similar to Kevin, possibly my favorite Mindclash game. It's hard to say without more plays of it, but like I really, really like this game a lot, and I think that it has the potential to be Mindclash's best game that they have in their catalog at this point. I want to play the game more. I want to explore it more, and at the end of the day, where I rank with it, I've been flip-flopping and going back and forth. I think I'm not the type of person that doesn't. I'm not the teacher that doesn't give you an A because I think you don't deserve it. So like for me, with it being that good, I'm gonna say it's 100.
Whoa!
I'm gonna
Awesome.
put it full out. For what it is. If like I could see it being lower in different regards because I can't get it to the table as often, but like for what the game is, this is
Nice.
near as perfect a game as it can be.
Yeah. I think so. That's a great rating, and I support that for sure. Yeah.
I support your increments of 10.
Thank you.
I was thinking, is it going to be a 90 or 100?
Yep.
It was the closest I've come to a 95, an increment of 5. But no, I think that like this is a game that for me gives as near perfect an experience as I've had in any recent memory.
Awesome. Love it.
I have a hard time disassociating the setup time and the takedown time.
And I haven't set it up at all, by the way, so that could be part of it.
So I think as far as gameplay goes and as far as production goes, I mean, this is like the magnum opus of this design team. I mean, I know they've done some other amazing games, but this game is amazing. The gameplay is amazing. The production, the Ian O'Toole design, it's beautiful. I love everything about it. If it wasn't for the setup, this would be like in my top 5 easily all time. It's a ding for me that it takes so long to get this game to the table. If I had a board game butler, awesome, cool. If this game was set up for me every time, like
you do have one, Logan.
Yeah, no, yeah, but that's just cruel to make him set this up by himself.
What else do you have, kids? Come on, let him make himself.
I mean, generally when we play games, whoever's hosting sets the game up before everybody arrives. That's hard to do with this game. When you come home and you got to make dinner or help out with dinner or eat dinner and help with kids going to bed and then still find time to set this up before everybody shows up. This is a beast to set up. I do like it more than Anachrony. Anachrony is not my number 1 game, but it is definitely up there. It was in the top 10, I think around number 7. If it wasn't for the setup, I would be in between your scores somewhere. And because I still can't separate that, it's a 93 for me. And I absolutely love this game. I love the gameplay. It's beautiful. It's amazing. Every experience has been fun. I had one frustrating house faction that wasn't my favorite, but the game was still fun and the gameplay is still fun. Like Kevin said earlier, you never feel like you're out of the game. And there are so many different ways to get victory points. I love getting the agendas out early and scoring early points in cycles, in the first cycle especially, when other people aren't scoring points. That's a big deal, but you got to try hard to do that, and then you're sacrificing some of the other engine type things that you could be building up for later rounds, or later cycles. It's a fantastic game. It's amazing. It's beautiful. If I had someone to set it up for me and take it down, like it'd be right up by your scores. I mean, it already is, but it would be up there in perfection level.
Surprises me that you're the lowest.
Yeah, usually I'm the
more enthusiastic.
Hey, give it a 10. Give it a 10.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I mean, anything over a 90 is
it's
a
absolutely.
fantastic game. High recommend from all of us for sure.
Yeah.
Overall, I think this is probably the highest recommended game that we've done on this scale, at least.
Yeah, absolutely. Go check it out if you like long, epic 4X games. It is, I think it's the one that
Worth
you
your
should
time.
definitely worth your time. Yeah.
I think that wraps up this episode. We just want to give a special thanks to David Turczi for being available for us to interview him. That was an awesome experience. It's been great talking about Voidfall and all the games we've been playing lately. It's always a good time.
If you've listened to this whole episode, you've gotten through about half a play of Voidfall, so you're fine.
Right. Yeah.
So the Golden Geek Award nominations are up on Board Game Geek. Please feel free to nominate us for the best podcast. We would really appreciate that. That would help us out a ton. So if you like our podcast, please check out the link in our show notes and go nominate us.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Longest Turn Board Gaming Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and you want more Longest Turn in your life, please check us out on Instagram. Also, be sure to check us out on Board Game Geek, where you can join our guild, Guild 3947, and check out our blog, where we post all our show notes and occasionally post more detailed reviews. If that's not enough for you, we have a Discord server. If you want to play a game with us on Board Game Arena, join our Board Game Arena group, The Longest Turn. Until next time, thanks for listening.
Tot ziens.
Goodbye.
See you later.
All right. Thanks, Kevin and Tyler. And David. I don't know what to say.
Thanks, Kevin, for the rules.
Sorry, go ahead.
I backed the Orient Express game today.
I did too.
like
Box. That's like the perfect. I mean, it's like, recipe box is a little bit taller, I think.
Probably.
it's like 2 or 3 dice thick.
I'd say it's like a fair measurement. I'm just trying to think of a good.
Yeah, I know. I'm just kidding.
Go pew 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 pew. Then